Prologue, day spas, and family schemes, there are moments in this life that stick with us for the rest of our days. They are profound and sharp, both good and bad. It's the people we meet, the experiences we have. Finding out that your parents gave you up because they couldn't deal is one. Staring in a mirror and realizing it was fractured, though no one else could see it, is another. Meeting a drag queen who could both threaten and love in a single breath is a third. I saw a boy on a college campus who looked like he couldn't breathe, and I sat with him until he realized I would always be by his side. I made the decision to leave a place where I'd made something of myself to return to a desert that had caused me so much hurt. I watched as a queen found her homo jock king, even though they were both idiots about it, and went about it in a way that should have blown up in their faces. I stood witness as two men vowed to love each other for the rest of their days, and then one of them tackled the other one, and they started embracing enthusiastically in front of everyone. Seriously, I was very confused by my reaction, and now here was another moment, so sharp, so profound, so confusing. Paul Auster's grandmother was very vocal during her massage. "Oh my God," Nana moaned loudly. "That's it, that's perfect. Sven, your hands, they are magic." Do all Swedish people know this secret art? Sven said. "My name is Alex. I've told you that repeatedly, and I'm from Michigan. Whatever your name is, don't stop. This is your calling, and I am calling you." "What the hell?" I muttered as I lay on my stomach with my face through a rubber hole. I still hadn't quite figured out how I agreed to this. There might have been a coupon involved. Seeing as how I was a broke college student, I was a sucker for coupons. Nana had said it was a gift for finishing yet another year of school. It never ended. Ever. Thank God for student loans. Ha ha ha. And since I had nothing else going on, I'd graciously accepted. I hadn't known it was for a couple's massage until we arrived at the resort. I'd been brought up to speed when Nana grabbed my hand as we approached the front desk and announced that she and her young lover were here to redeem the coupon. The two women behind the desk stared at us. Nana smiled at them. They had no choice but to believe her. It was too late for me to back out. Well, to be fair, it probably wasn't, but Nana's grip was stronger than I gave her credit for. I was uncomfortable. Not only was someone I didn't know touching me, Nana sounded as if she was having the time of her life with Sven, Alex, even though he'd only started 3 minutes before. Enya was playing through the speakers overhead. The lit candles smelled like lemon. It couldn't get worse. Yes, that's it. Scratch that, now it was worse. Tanya, the poor woman currently working on my back with oil, coughed as if she was choking. "Sorry about that," I muttered to her. Tanya was ever the professional. It happens, though I don't know that I've ever heard someone so exuberant. That was an understatement. You have no idea. You carry a lot of stress in your upper shoulders. That was probably nonsense, but she sounded earnest, so I didn't call her on it. "Oh, that's a thing. Do you do yoga?" Number yoga was for white hipsters who had disposable income. My last meal consisted of 4-day-old leftovers Sandy had brought home from a date with the homo jock king. Never thought about it. You should. It can do wonders for the body. I doubted that immensely. I'll keep that in mind. She pressed down against my right shoulder until I thought it would pop out of the socket. I closed my eyes as Nana exclaimed loudly, "Have you two been together long?" Nana had hissed a warning at me as we'd been led to a room. She said that if anyone suspected we weren't actually a couple, the coupon would be revoked, and we could get arrested and thrown in jail. That wasn't true, but she believed it so much that I almost believed it. Not long. You're certainly an unusual couple, Tanya suspected. Damn her and her nosiness. She probably made it her mission in life to ferret out people who tried to use coupons illegally. Images of me in prison orange flashed through my mind. I looked good. To be fair, I looked good in almost everything, so it wasn't surprising. But still, I'd rather avoid jail. I would be a target. Our love knows no bounds. Sven sighed in despair as Nana instructed him that her thighs needed attention. Maybe a few bounds, I amended. She's a firecracker, Tanya murmured as Enya played over a flurry of synthesized strings. How do you keep up with her? Wow. I didn't know massage therapists were also journalists. Tanya, can I call you Tanya? Of course, anything for you, Mr. Ellis. She started working the muscles in my lower back. I'm in it for the money. Her hands paused. Come again, not likely. I felt uncomfortable. The old broad's loaded. I have expensive tastes. She keeps me funded. I keep her satisfied. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Oh dear, Tanya breathed. She's my sugar mama, I said, wincing as Tanya resumed her work. I'm her baby boy. That's how nice for you. She didn't sound like she meant that at all. Massages were boring. It was time to up my game. But, I turned my head to the side to look up at her with one eye. Can you keep a secret? She nodded furiously. I'm a masseuse. I keep all the secrets. You wouldn't believe some of the things I've heard. Because you're just like a doctor, right? And I'm your patient. You have to keep my confidence. Anything I tell you can't leave this room. Exactly. Good. I took a deep breath, showing just how conflicted I was, but still determined. I've hired someone, Tanya frowned. Hired someone for what? You know. I screwed up my face, letting my tongue hang out as I mimicked a difficult situation. To take care of the problem. Tanya looked as if she was having trouble breathing. You mean? Yes, I mean, Mr. Ellis, that's illegal. I turned my face back down into the hole. I know, but it's the only way, and if I can pull it off, I'll be rich. I've managed to convince her to cut her children out of the will, leaving me as the only beneficiary to her estate. You hired a consultant, Tanya whispered fervently. Where does one even find a consultant? Online, there's an entire section on there, but it's disguised under people selling patio furniture. You just have to know the lingo. Tanya hesitated, her hands getting a little too close to my back. Lingo. Is that like an urban thing? Oh, Tanya. My poor, sweet Tanya. Exactly, an urban thing. Only people of color know about it. And seeing as how I'm biracial, I know all the words. You have to know what specific things to look for, like frizzle denizzle and hibbity bip. For instance, the ad I found said 2 deck chairs for sale for cool cat magats. That's how you know. She leaned over me, her mouth near my ear. Do you think they could help me with a problem I have? Uh-oh. What? She spoke in a quiet rush. My boyfriend broke up with me last year. I don't know why. All I said was that I wanted to get married and have 3 babies. He said it was too soon to talk about such things on a first date. Yikes, I might not have thought this through. Oh, well, he might have had a point. Her fingernails dug into the small of my back. He didn't. He just couldn't see that we were meant to be together. Do you know what he did next? Filed for a restraining order. That too, but this was before that. He said he didn't think this was going to work for him and paid the check and left. We hadn't even had dessert or coffee. That's too bad, I managed to say, wondering if I still had to tip her when we were done. Her breath smelled like mints. It was very pleasant. And now he has a new girlfriend, and he posts pictures of them going on trips on Instagram, and he doesn't even need to use filters. They're that good. I don't use filters either because my skin is pretty much flawless. Ow, Tanya. That's too hard. Sorry, she said, and she actually sounded apologetic. So if you know someone who could take care of her, that would really help me out. hibbity-bip. When I'd woken up this morning, I hadn't realized I'd be negotiating with an emotional mess. Maybe, but don't you think he deserves his happiness? I'm sure there are plenty of men out there who would want to marry and start a family with you. But they're not him. He smells like spice and sleeps in the nude. I frowned into the hole. My life was so weird. I thought you said you only went on the one date and he left you there. How do you know what he wears when he you-know-what? In the interest of not being called to testify in what I'm sure is going to be a spectacle of a trial, I'm not going to ask that question. Look, Tanya, he wasn't the one for you. You gotta let him go. I paused, considering. Also, no trouble. Trouble is bad. But you said you were going to. I never said anything, Tanya. I made implications that you inferred incorrectly. What the hell? All I meant was that I'm here with the love of my life after shopping for patio furniture online, and you started casting aspersions on my character. I expect an apology. Nay, I demand it, she sputtered. But there's you said. I pushed myself up on the massage table, reaching down to make sure the towel stayed in place. Massage over, I announced, glaring at Tanya as I sat on the edge of the table. Sven looked over at me gratefully. Darn, are you sure? I mean, you look sure, so I should probably go. Thank you for coming to the oasis in the desert resort. Namaste, he bowed, and then practically ran from the room. I'll miss you, Nana yelled after him. Tanya stared at me. I glared back. Please leave. My sugar mama and I need to discuss the depths of our love for each other. She turned and left. And trouble is wrong, I called after her as the door closed. What happened? Nana asked as she turned her head to look at me. She was wearing one of Helena's wigs, a bouffant most recently used for the glory that was Agnes Beaverton. It suited her, even if it was listing lazily on the side of her head. I was just getting going. I sighed. Trouble for hire plot that came out of nowhere, you know, the usual. Heterosexuality is so exhausting. I don't even know. She nodded. Yeah, the straights tend to do that. I was involved in a trouble for hire by no fault of my own in 1967. 3 people died, and I can never go back to the state of Kentucky. Her eyes shifted side to side. I mean, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm old and feeble and senile. I didn't know how much of what Nana said was nonsense, but I didn't think it was much. Old and feeble and senile, she grinned at me. Exactly, sugar mama, huh? I shrugged. You got it going on, I'd be so lucky. She sat up, adjusting her towel. I do, don't I? I'm a hot commodity. You should see all the men sniffing after me at bingo. I have to beat them off with a stick. I looked up at the ceiling and wondered how this had become my life. Definitely through no fault of my own. Later, as we were wrapped in thick, fuzzy robes and getting pedicures, Nana asked a question I didn't see coming. I should have known she had ulterior motives. She was a devious woman. How's your love life? I groaned, and not because the woman at my feet was a master with a loofah. I don't believe I need to answer that question. She scoffed before sipping on her mimosa. Of course you do. It's the reason I brought you here. If looks could kill, she'd probably survive that too. Nana was going to outlive us all, thankfully. The truth has finally been revealed, you minx, she laughed. It was a thin, rusty sound that I adored. You're cute, Kori, but I don't need to get a couple's massage with you. I have plenty of gentlemen callers more than willing to rub my shoulders if I need it in the privacy of my daughter's home. As if today could get any worse. There are things we don't need to say out loud. Less is more. She waved a hand at me derisively. Honey, if we don't say what's on our minds, nothing will ever get done. Tell him, Larry. Larry Auster leaned forward from his chair on the other side of her. Was wearing a pink robe by choice, God love him, and drinking a fruity cocktail with an umbrella in it. It was his third. His face was a little flushed. She's got a point. Sometimes she has a point, Maddie Auster said from her chair next to me. Her robe had flowers on it and she had white wine. Her eyes had cucumbers on them, which reminded me that I was hungry. It just so happens that this happens to be one of those times. Traitors, I muttered. You planned this, didn't you? This is entrapment. I know my rights. Of course not, Maddie said. This was a gift for you for finishing your second to last year of school. And also entrapment, Nana said. You're very good at this, Larry told the woman who lifted his feet from the soaker. I think I'd like another one of these whatever they are. Would that be possible? He looked down at his glass. I don't know how I keep drinking them so fast. Your husband is enjoying himself, I told Maddie. She smiled. I know. He's so silly when he's relaxed. It's one of the things I love about him. We just want to make sure you're happy, Nana said. We know it can be tough. Paul and Vince have found love in a hopeless place. Jesus Christ, I muttered. I am never downloading music for you again. And Sandy and Darren are being disgustingly cute. That was true. They were disgusting. If you told me last year that Sanford Stewart and Darren Main would be some weird power couple, I would have laughed in your face before kicking you in the shins for even considering such a thing. But here we were. And, Nana continued, your vegetarian friend got him some cop love like the heroine of a torrid romance novel. I rolled my eyes. Vegetarian Nana, Thai is vegetarian, not Vietnamese, she frowned. Oh, are you sure? I could have sworn he was Vietnamese. I'm sure. Well, regardless. With all of your friends coupling up around you, it can be tough when you're the only single one left. Not all my friends. I have other friends. You do? Larry asked as he was handed another cocktail. Really? Name two, Maddie said. Meddlesome bitches. There's okay, hold on, Exactly, Nana said, as if that solved everything. You don't have any other friends, which is sad, yes, but that's another intervention entirely. I knew it. I knew this was an intervention. Jig is up, Larry said, poking himself in the eye with the umbrella. Maddie sighed as she sat up, the cucumbers falling on her chest. We were doing so well, too. Now I was grumpy. Who cares if all my friends are dating each other? I don't. So what if Paul and Vince are on their honeymoon? And so what if at the same time, Sandy and Darren decided they needed 2 weeks away in Las Vegas? Who the hell spends 2 weeks in Vegas? So what if Dom went all stupidly romantic, and now he and Ty are going to be together forever in Seafair? I'm fine. Are you? Nana asked gently. I crossed my arms, feeling strangely claustrophobic. Yes, I'm happy for them. They got everything they ever wanted, and they deserve it, especially after all the crap they've been through. Besides, they're all old. I'm only 23. Hoo boy, Larry said. I remember saying that when I was 23, and now look at me. He grinned. His teeth were stained blue. I groaned as I put my face in my hands. I felt a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. A lot of things changed quickly, Maddie said. We just want to make sure you're okay with all of it. We worry about all of our children this way. That caused a tiny ache in my chest. I had fit in with the Auster family almost from the very beginning. Maddie and Larry made sure I knew I was one of theirs. It had been weird at first, since I wasn't used to parental figures acting parental. I'd been on my own longer than I cared to think about, and there was an adjustment period where I'd been unsure of their motives. But I learned that with the Austers, motives were the furthest things from their minds, except for times like right now, and all the other times. I dropped my hands and laid my head back against the chair. I'm fine, I said again, and this time I tried to make it sound like they could believe me. Really, I promise. And even if I wasn't, It's not like I have time for anything more right now. I've got my future to think about, plans to make. You're very driven, Larry agreed. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. Damn him and his ability to make me feel things while my cuticles were getting worked on. Thank you. So you see, there's nothing you have to worry about. Let's talk about something else. Yes, Nana said. Let's. How's Daddy Charlie doing? I blinked. I hadn't expected her to fold so easily. Good. I took him to the doctor last week, though he complained the entire time he could drive himself. Getting his blood pressure under control? Maddie asked. Yeah, he's on the right medication now. Healthy as a horse, or so he says. I'm keeping my eye on him, though. We all are. Nasty business, getting old, Nana said, a strange note in her voice I couldn't quite place. But I'm glad to hear he's doing better. He's got that new beau. Nothing helps you feel young again like finding someone to spend your time with. This felt dangerous. Surely they didn't know anything, right? Paul and Sandy swore they'd keep their mouths shut. They swore. I guess, I said slowly. Robert's good for him. Charlie's grumpy as always, but I think it's just a front now. I've seen him smile more in the last few months than in the past year. Good, good, Larry said, crunching on ice. His drink was almost empty again. We can't wait to meet this Robert. I was starting to sweat. I told myself it was because I was wearing a robe in Arizona at the beginning of June. I almost believed it. I'm sure it will happen sooner rather than later. Oh, I imagine it will, Maddie said, munching on one of her eye cucumbers. In fact, I suggested to Paul before he and Vince left that we should have a barbecue at some point this summer. Invite Charlie and Robert. Very casual. I wiped a trickle of sweat from my brow. Had the air conditioning failed, this was barbaric. That sounds good. I wonder who else we should invite, Nana asked as she stroked the single hair on her chin. Is there anyone else that we could think of that should be present at a Meet the Family barbecue? Her eyes widened comically as she gasped. Oh, didn't I hear Robert has a son? I needed to get out of here. If I had to run out the front doors in a short robe, I would. I'd done worse things for a lot less. That's right, Larry said, eyes twinkling. A son. What was his name? I have no idea, I grunted. Are any of you hungry? I'm hungry. I could sure use a sandwich. Maybe I could just go home and make us all one and bring it back. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. I'll do just. Maddie shook her head. I'm not hungry at all. And now that I think about it, I do recall hearing Robert had a son. Jerry, Jackson. Jeremy, I said without thinking. And then I squeaked uncontrollably as I slapped a hand over my mouth. They all turned slowly to look at me. Even the nail technicians. Jeremy, Nana said. I shook my head. Nope, number nine, nyet, non. I absolutely will not have this discussion with you know what. Hold that thought. First and foremost, who's gonna get it? Give me a name because I'm going to end them. And it was about that time that my masseuse Tanya was walking by. She stopped and stared at me. Hibbity-bip, she breathed. I knew it was real. No, Tanya, I yelled. No hibbity-bip, trouble is bad. She hurried away. Got it. I was going to get so subpoenaed. I stood up, pulling my robe tighter, and stepped out of the foot-soaking tub. Water droplets splashed on the floor, and I almost slipped. I managed to save myself and turned to stare fiercely at my family. I put my hands on my hips so they knew I meant business. So precious, Nana whispered. Now see here, I said sternly. I don't know who opened their fat mouths, but I have an idea. Darren and Vince, Maddie supplied helpfully. But wait. What, really? Darren and Vince? What the fuck? Language, Larry scolded. Especially while I'm getting my nails done. I threw up my hands. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't know what they told you, but it isn't true. Professor Olsen is great, but I don't think of him that way. Maddie said. He's hot for teacher, Nana told her technician. I even looked up the charter for the U of A, Larry said. It's not against the rules for a teacher to get involved with, "Why are you like this?" I demanded. Maddie snorted. "Sweetheart, you knew what you were getting into a long time ago. You just didn't realize it would swing your way eventually while you were gleefully meddling in the background. That's not on us. That's on you. It's your time to shine." That sounded terrible. "I'm leaving," I announced grandly. "I bid you good day. I drove you here in the limo I forgot to give back after Paul's bachelor party," Nana reminded me. I said right, damn it. Why the hell don't I have a car? "Because you won't let us buy you one as an early graduation present," Larry reminded me. "I like riding the bus," I retorted. "No one likes riding the bus," Maddie said. "Not even the bus drivers." "Keys," I demanded, holding out my hand. "I'll drive myself," Nana snorted. "Like hell I'm going to let you drive my stolen limo. I'll take you home." Larry frowned. "Are we letting you drive again? I thought after you hit all those mailboxes, they took your license away." "Run," Nana yelled, kicking her feet out of the soaker and spraying her technician in the face. And we did just that. Nana sat with her hands at 10 and 2, and her face practically pressed against the windshield. I was all for senior independence, but when she almost sideswiped another car for the third time, I started rethinking my position. It didn't help that she'd somehow found a cassette tape for the Mullen soundtrack, only God knew where, and felt the need to play the song Reflection over and over whenever I was in the limo. She thought it was a trans anthem. Bless her heart. She was very progressive that way. "See that damn girl staring back at me," she muttered along with the song that had been replayed 6 times so far. Traffic was very bad for a Friday. If I'd met Mullen right then, I'd have let her stab me. And because it needed to be said, I told her, "I don't need you guys worrying about me." She glanced over at me as a man shook his fist out his window when she cut him off. "Fascinating. I'm being serious." "Oh, okay, just as long as you're being serious." I huffed out a breath and slumped down farther in the cracked seat. "I'm not lonely, or whatever you've got in your heads. I'm happy for everyone for getting hitched or being in love or whatever. It's not something I'm ready for, or even looking for." "Sure," she said easily. "If you say so." I narrowed my eyes at her. "You're taking this rather well," she shrugged. "If that's what you say, then so shall it be." "Good, well then, since that's out of the way, how about but what if?" I blinked. "What if what?" She turned to stare at me for far longer than one should while driving a stretch limo. "I'm pretty sure we ran a red light if the honking was any indication." "What if?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." "I know, but I've got a feeling you will." That didn't sound good. "Are you threatening me?" "Of course not." "Good, because that would be—" "I lied," she crowed. "It was a threat." She cackled maniacally as she reached out and pressed a button on the stereo to rewind the song yet again. I watched from the front of the house as she drove away, La Cucaracha echoing throughout the neighborhood as she laid on the horn. She disappeared around the corner with a squeal of tires, the brake lights barely flashing as she went through the stop sign. It wasn't true. None of what they'd said. I wasn't lonely. I didn't care that everyone in the goddamn world had met the love of their life, and I certainly didn't feel a damn thing for Jeremy Olsen. This summer I was going to focus on what I needed to do in order to figure out my future. That was it. I turned and went inside the empty house. I wondered if there were any leftovers in the fridge. Chapter 1. True love is unspoken. "There you are," Charlie said, as I walked into the Queen's lair on Saturday night. The sounds of jacket filling up were loud below as people got ready for the drag show sans Helena handbasket. "I was wondering if you were going to show up." He was sitting on a stool, his camera on the tripod in front of him. He wore his old leather jacket, something Sandy had told me he'd had since he first met him while trying to get into the bar underage. Regardless of his age, he still looked like a gruff leather daddy, and that's exactly what I needed right now. He wouldn't speak in vague circles or be meddlesome, hopefully. "I told you I would," I muttered as I sat on the stool next to him. The lair was strangely desolate without Helena getting ready. Bus was running late. "I thought Sandy left you his car while he was gone," I shrugged. "I didn't want to try and fight for a parking space, and if I have a drink, I don't want to take any chances." He looked me up and down, taking in my skirt and red top. "Nobody gave you any grief." I shook my head. "Protective as always." "Nah, and even if they did, I can handle myself." "You carrying that mace I got you?" "Yes, Daddy." "Good, don't be afraid to use it. There are idiots out there. It's better to spray first and ask questions later." That troubled me, but I let it go. "I know." He reached over and patted my shoulder. "I'll take you home after if that's all right with you. Help me sleep better tonight knowing you're all right." "Thanks, Daddy," he grunted as he went back to fiddling with his camera. It was new, a gift from all of us for his 79th birthday. He told us we didn't need to fuss over him, but nobody was fooled. We'd all completely ignored the way he wiped his eyes after unwrapping the package, because it was the right thing to do. He was proud of it, showing it off whenever he could. "You ready for everyone to get back tomorrow? Must have been nice to have the house to yourself, especially with no school stuff to worry about." It was nice, I agreed. But I got over it on the second day. Too quiet. "I get that," he said then. "Heard from Nana," I groaned. "Oh, Christ, not you too." He held up his hands in placation. "You ain't gonna hear shit from me. She just asked that I keep an eye on you. Said you seemed down is all." I glanced at him before looking back down on the dance floor. The chairs in front of the stage were filled with people drinking and laughing. A queen down from Phoenix was filling in for Helena while Sandy was on his gaycation. She was good but didn't hold a candle to our resident queen. "I'm fine." "Sure you are, but it's okay not to be, you know that, right?" I knew what he was saying and the unasked question on his lips. I was Kori today, something I'd woken up feeling. They all thought Kori was a shield, someone I needed when I was feeling out of sorts. They weren't wrong exactly, though they all knew better than to bring it up unless I did first. They tried to understand, and I loved them for it. But it was hard to explain why I felt this way. How I could outwardly be two different people. I didn't think it mattered to them. I was the same on the inside. "Yeah, Daddy, I know." "Good. And if you ever need to talk about anything, you can come to me. I might not be as young as I used to be, but I know my way around." I laughed. "I bet you do. How's Robert?" His cheeks turned pink, though I'd never call him out for it. It was adorable how he looked whenever someone brought up Robert Olsen, a dapper man with a cane who Charlie seemed to think hung the moon. "He's fine," Charlie muttered, refusing to even glance my way. "He sure is," I teased, his lips twisted into a playful sneer. "Don't think you're above me putting you over my knee, girlie, because I will." He reached over and tugged on a lock of my hair, which was curled down around my shoulders. "Hair looks nice." I rolled my eyes. "If you had any idea what it takes to actually straighten my hair, you'd say it looks more than nice." "It's a process that takes hours," he chuckled. "Wouldn't know much about that, and you're right, it looks more than nice. Beautiful, even." I blushed and looked away. "You old so-and-so, if I didn't know any better, I'd think you were sweet on me." "You'd know it if I was." "Promises, promises," I said. "You want something to drink. I can go down to the bar and get it." He shook his head. "Don't need to do that." "I can have someone come up." "What? How?" He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, thin tube. He held it up over the banister in front of us and pressed a button on the side. It was a laser pointer, and it reflected off the glasses in the bar. One of the bartenders, Isaac, turned and grinned. He waved up at us and turned to a shirtless barback, nodding toward the lair. "Perks of the job," Charlie said as he put the laser pointer away. "Stairs aren't as easy as they used to be. And since Mike is a cheap asshole and won't buy walkie-talkies for the bar, it's the next best thing." "Such a diva," I said. "Your knees okay?" He rolled his eyes. "Yes, and so is my heart, and my blood pressure, and my prostate, so you don't need to ask. You all worry too much." "I'm glad to hear that about your prostate. I'm sure Robert is too, now that I think." He held a stubby, thick finger up in warning. "One more word out of you, and I'll give you a stern talking to like you wouldn't believe." Before I could reply, "Oh, I believe it," the door to the Queen's lair opened, and a muscle twink appeared, holding a tray. He looked like every other 18-year-old Mike hired. Very specific taste, that one. It was like he had a factory that put out skinny white boys at an alarming rate. The twink's jeans were slung low on his hips, and you could see the top of his pubis. He had a tribal tattoo on his arm, and I despaired greatly over the future of the gays. Muscle Twink handed Charlie a bottle of water. "Whatever she wants, it's on the house." Muscle Twink must have been new because he said, "I think that's against the rules." "Oh boy," I said. "You should probably reconsider, friend." Charlie glared at him. He may have been damn near 80 years old, but if Charlie gave you that look, you either did exactly as he said or you ran in the opposite direction in fear of your life. "Excuse me," Muscle Twink fidgeted nervously. He had sweat on his brow. Sheer terror was a good look on him. "What can I get you?" "Catonic," I said sweetly. "With a lime, please and thank you." He spun around and disappeared back through the door. "Children," Charlie muttered. "They never learn." "Such children," I agreed. Charlie snorted. "Dear, you're still a child yourself." I gasped, a hand going to my throat. "I'll have you know I'm older than I look. You know as well as I do that black don't crack." He chuckled as he shook his head. "Be thankful for it, Kori. When you get to be as old as I am, you're just happy everything still works. You're not that old. And even if you were, love will keep you young at heart." "You're as bad as the others," Charlie said. "I don't know how I ever thought otherwise." "I might even be worse," I agreed. "It's because I was trapped between two worlds, the drama of Seafair and the ridiculousness of Tucson. It changes a person." "Well, I for one am glad you're here, even if it's ridiculous." "Me too," I said quietly. I left him alone to play with his camera. It was nice being here. Even though I relished having the house to myself for a little while, there was such a thing as too much quiet. I'd even thought about offering to watch Wheels while Paul and Vince were gone, but given that I still had classes before they left, it was best that he went with Maddie and Larry. I would be happy when everyone got home tomorrow, though I'd probably bitch and moan about it to save face. Muscle Twink returned, eyes wide and looking fearful. He squeaked when Charlie glanced at him. He even bowed a little when giving me my drink, which I was perfectly fine with. I hadn't lied. I'd spent hours on my hair, and I deserved to have someone bow to me. I considered it reparations. And I would have been perfectly fine sitting in silence, listening to the sound of the bar filling up below, seeing flashes of queens behind the stage curtain. It was something I was used to, and the cocktail was strong and just what I needed. Which meant, of course, that Charlie had to prove he was just as meddlesome as everyone else in my life. I should have stayed home. "I took my gentleman out for a meal last night," Charlie said, apropos of nothing, and I should have realized it for what it was. I was just happy to hear him volunteer information about Robert. Charlie was fiercely private, even with those of us he considered family. We hadn't seen hide nor hair of Robert since Paul and Vince's wedding, even though we'd begged to have them over for dinner. No dice so far. I played it cool, not knowing what lay ahead. Oh, that sounds lovely. Did you have a good time? I was already planning ways I could get every single detail to relay to the others when they returned. We did, Charlie said. I had swordfish. He had the salmon. Gross. That sounded terrible. Seafood was disgusting. How nice. There was a piano player. And candles on the table. Oh my God, old people on romantic dates was my new favorite thing. What the fuck? I desperately needed to coo at him and make other assorted appreciative noises to make sure he understood I would die for them. Instead, I said, "That sounds like the perfect evening. Very romantic. Did Robert enjoy himself?" Charlie was still playing around with his camera, not looking in my direction. He did. We had a most illuminating conversation. The best kind, I sighed, stars in my eyes. I could just imagine the scene, their hands joined on the table, Charlie smiling quietly, Robert telling some story that was inconsequential to anyone but them. My heart ached sweetly at the thought. I wanted to write love poetry and shout it from the rooftops, and you came up. I paused the stunning rendition of Old Love/New Love that was running through my head. It was a masterpiece, or it would have been had I not been startled out of it. I did. Why? This and that, Charlie said. I talk about you kids a lot, you know. I didn't trust him in the slightest. The old man was up to something. I was onto him. What happened next happened on purpose, though I'd never be able to prove it. But I knew he was waiting for the exact moment when I lifted my drink and took a sip to say, "Just so happened that his son was asking about you. You remember Jeremy?" Which, of course, caused my throat to lock up, forcing me to cough. And when one coughs with a mouthful of liquid, one tends to spray it out in a most unflattering manner. So there I was, sitting next to my old friend turned traitor when I managed to hack up half a lung vodka tonic exploding from my mouth, the liquid glittering prettily in the overhead lights of the club. And then, from below, came cries of disgust as it rained down on those waiting for the drag show to begin. Charlie jerked his head up to look at me, eyes wide. "Do you realize what this means?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I glared angrily at him as I wiped my chin. "No, Charlie, I don't know what it." He was solemn when he said, "You spit your drink over the balcony. It landed on someone. That means you have to marry them. It's tradition." "What the fuck? That's not a thing. That's never been Paul and Vince," he reminded me, and I was going to end him. And while Darren and Sandy might not have started the same way, they certainly. His smile faded. "Well, they did have a moment up here, so I suppose that counts." I stood immediately from the stool. No, gross. Why are you like this? You're telling me I could have been sitting in Homo Jock King residue. Do you have any idea how much this skirt cost? I frowned. It didn't cost that much now that I think about it. I'm poor, and Sandy showed me the art of thrifting, but still. Charlie cackled as he leaned over the balcony. "Let's see who you have to marry now." "Okay, he certainly looks capable. Wait. No, sorry, that's a lesbian. Oh, now there's someone who could be perfect for you. Nope. Never mind." He's shaking his fist angrily up at me, and I have half a mind to go down there and tell him to watch his mouth. Charlie turned 2 fingers toward his eyes and then pointed them down at whoever I'd spit on. "JAQs," I gasped. "I trusted you." Charlie snorted as he sat back on his stool. "All I did was say that my date's son was asking about you. You were the one that overreacted like a drama queen. And believe me when I say I know drama queens." "Whatever," I muttered, wiping droplets off my top. "You did that on purpose." "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said mildly. "Re-ite, you keep trying, Daddy. See where it gets you." He laughed again and went back to his camera. I waited. He said nothing more. That was fine. I absolutely didn't need to know what Jeremy Olsen had asked about me. I hadn't seen him since the wedding either, at least not face to face. Glimpses from across campus, sure, and if he just happened to be in the health sciences library when I was, and I hadn't been able to work up the nerve to go over and say hello and instead hid in the stacks, spying on him through the shelves, that was my business. He was in a position of power. That intimidated me, nothing else. So no, I didn't need to know what he said to his dad. In fact, it was probably nothing. Just a simple, "How is Kori or Kori doing?" He was being polite, and even if there'd been a weird moment after the wedding when I walked him back to his car when we'd stood there staring at each other awkwardly, it was nothing. Charlie was an evil man, and I knew he was waiting for me to ask. Well, the joke was on him, because two could play at that game. I settled myself back on the stool, smoothing out my skirt. Charlie pushed a button on his camera. It beeped. I took another sip, a smaller one this time in case he decided to be an asshole again. He didn't. He turned the camera on the tripod. Why was it so warm? Had the air conditioning broken in here too? Charlie shifted on his stool. Was this what a heart attack felt like? Was I dying? Charlie cleared his throat. No, 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 what did he say? I hadn't meant that to come out sounding so shriekish, so imagine my surprise when it did just that. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. When I spoke again, my voice was even, the very definition of calm. Not that I care or that it matters. I suppose it's nice when someone is thinking about you enough to ask, that's all. Charlie's lips quirked. That devious bastard, he was playing me, and even worse, it was working. I was outmatched, outgunned, out-everythinged. It wasn't much. Oh, I said, deflating slightly. That's good. Yes, just asked what your plans were for the summer. I didn't know at the time, so I couldn't tell him. I frowned. Well, I am interning at Phoenix House. Terrible name, because Phoenix is a cesspool, and Tucson is better in almost every regard. I suppose they mean the bird, like the LGBTQ community rises from the ashes more powerful than we were before to smite down heterosexual nonsense. And what you're doing after you graduate. I don't even know. I exclaimed, that old familiar panic starting to wrap itself around my head and heart. I've only gone to school for the last 6 years in order to do something with deserving kids, so they never have to go through what I went through. But who in the hell decided that I need to stick with that and pile on student loans on top of it? What kind of fucking racket is adulthood anyway? And how you've been, since he hasn't really seen much of you as of late? I paused, considering. Fine, mostly. I guess. Mean I've been busy, what with planning for my future and surviving and worrying about how overdraft fees are designed to keep us trapped in debt, and that he wanted Robert to pass on that he was thinking of you and hoped that everything was going well. I gaped at Charlie. Close your mouth, dear heart, Charlie said gently. In a place like this, that could be seen as an invitation. I snapped my mouth closed with an audible click. He really asked all that, Charlie nodded. He did, or so Robert said. I stared at him suspiciously. Are you meddling? He looked like a sweet, rough old man. It was a lie. Have I ever? Yes, I said fiercely. All the time, in fact. It's like a trait with all of you that you passed on to me like some goddamn virus. You do nothing but meddle. I've been made complicit on numerous occasions due to all your meddling. Before I moved back here, I did nothing of the sort. You've tainted me. Charlie shrugged. My word against yours. You'll never be able to prove it. Feeble old man, remember. He was a master at manipulation, and I was nothing but a pawn in his Machiavellian game. I see right through you, don't think I don't. You're getting loud again. A piece of advice. I sniffed daintily. If you must. He smiled and reached over to squeeze my knee. His hand was warm and kind, and even though I was currently plotting ways to end him, I loved him so. Don't let time get away from you. I know you've got a lot going on and you worry about things. And sometimes you shield yourself away. Armor is all well and good until one day you forget that it's there and never take it off. I stared at him suspiciously. That sounds like one of those times where you say one thing, but you mean something else entirely, he sighed. Nothing gets by you, does it? Never. He looked back out onto the floor below. I made mistakes. I hurt people and told lies. It's hard for me to have regrets over some of it because I got kids, even if we don't talk anymore. That wasn't quite true. They didn't talk to him, and though I could almost understand their reasons, I thought it was extraordinarily unfair. He rarely mentioned his life before, the one where he was married to a woman, until he couldn't hide who he was anymore. I had complicated feelings about hiding one's sexuality, but it wasn't my place to say whether the decisions of others were right. Especially not to Charlie. But the fact that he was talking about it now with me was not something I took lightly. It was important. Young queers these days tended to forget the sacrifices of those who came before us, who helped give us everything we had today. While we still had to fight, we weren't the ones who threw the first brick. I wasted a lot of time, he continued. And that's no one's fault but my own. I wish things had been different. How, I don't know, but I do. Only thing I can do is be thankful for all the things I have now, and all the people I've met along the way who have helped me become a better man. He smiled quietly. It transformed his craggy, wrinkled face into something soft. I wanted to kiss it over and over again. Vagina, Sandy, Paul, Vince and Darren, you of course. And Robert, I said, teasing him because he needed to hear it. And Robert, he agreed. I told you how we met, I snorted. Getting your prostate checked. So romantic. Kid, when you get to be my age, that's probably the most action you're ever going to get. I choked. He hit my back a few times until I managed to breathe on my own. He was sitting in the waiting room with me, and I wasn't staring, no matter what he might tell you. Going to the doctor is never fun, but when you're old, it's one of those things you gotta do to make sure everything's still in working order. And it is, I said quickly. Right. Yes, he said, sounding grumpy. I told all of you not to worry. That's not going to happen anytime soon. If we have to continue to go with you to your appointments, we will. Good to know, Charlie said. There I was, ignoring the only other man in the room with me because I was hoping. I winced. Yeah, I don't need every detail. More lovey stuff, less preparation stuff. The doctor was running late, of course he was. Doctors never do anything on time, and I was thinking about taking a nap. In public? I asked, scandalized. Just wait, he said. One day you're going to find out that naps are the best thing in the world. Anyway, I was about to close my eyes when he asked if the doctor was good with his hands. I gaped at him. He shrugged. I told him I didn't have any complaints, and he had this look on his face, like he knew exactly what he just said and was trying to gauge my reaction. An old leather bear like you, I bet you don't, he said. So romantic, I breathed. I was going to go back to my nap when he decided that we were sitting too far apart. An entire waiting room empty, and he needed to sit in the chair right next to mine. I glared at him, but he ignored me. Sounds like he had you figured out right away. All crusty on the outside, but marshmallowy on the inside. Charlie scowled. I'm crusty on the inside too. I grinned at him. Of course you are. And he just started talking, and I remember thinking, who the hell is this guy? He had a cane and was wearing a damn three-piece suit to the doctor's office. And his tie matched the kerchief in the front pocket. Same color and shit. Oh, the horror, I cried. Such madness. Charlie ignored me. And he wouldn't stop talking. He said he'd been reading his horoscope in an old magazine before I arrived. He said it told him that he needed to take more chances and that soon a surly man in a leather jacket would cross his path. Wow, I said in awe. Dude's got moves. Holy crap. I told him I didn't believe that, and he laughed at me. He said it didn't matter if I didn't believe it or not, because here I was, and here he was, and his name was Robert, and that it was very nice to meet me. I sighed dreamily. Charlie reached up and touched his camera again, not really doing anything with it, but seemingly just checking to make sure it was there. I wondered if that was his armor, seeing everything through a lens, almost removed. Before I knew it, he was being called back, and then I was being called back, and for reasons I couldn't quite explain, I was kicking myself for not doing more. And then the doctor was doing his examination. No, go back to the sweetness. And I told him to hurry the hell up because I had to do something. Charlie grimaced. It probably wasn't the first time I'd said that to someone who was helping me. Jesus fucking Christ. By the time I got back out, the room was empty. I figured he was gone or still back in with his doctor, and I thought about waiting. But that seemed a little creepy, I supplied helpfully. Charlie glared at me. I was going to say forward, that works too. But it didn't matter because as soon as I went outside, he was there sitting on a bench under a tree. As soon as he saw me, he stood up and all but demanded that I take him to lunch. Charlie reached up and rubbed his jaw. Haven't been able to shake him since. I laughed, delighted. You'd want to? He smiled ruefully. I suppose, and maybe I was grouchy about it first, but I knew I couldn't waste time anymore. After my marriage dissolved, I went a little wild. I told myself I wasn't going to be tied down again. And then Vagina Muffman came into my world, all sequins and feathers and an attitude like you wouldn't believe. He looked down at his hands. I should have done more for her. You regret all the chances you don't take, some more than others. She knew, though, I think. She'd be happy for me. I know she would, I told him. Robert's pretty great, huh? He is, Charlie agreed. He glanced over at me. Armor, kiddo, my jacket, my camera, you're you. It's okay to have it. But don't let it be all you know. I have no idea what you're talking about. He rolled his eyes. That I find hard to believe. Obtuse, maybe, but not clueless. You're smarter than the rest of us combined. If Paul and Sandy can do what they did, I expect you to do the same. It sounds like you're trying to pimp me out. I won't have it, Charlie, he snorted. Of course not, dear. He opened his mouth to say something else, but then closed it and shook his head. Though I'd probably regret it, I asked, what? It's I don't know. You know when you meet someone and you know them from somewhere, but for the life of you, you can't remember from where. Sure, I said slowly. Happens to the best of us. He looked frustrated. At the wedding, when Jeremy came, I could have sworn I'd seen him before. I blinked. Wait, what? Really? Where? I don't know, but he looked familiar, could just be my mind playing tricks on me. His lips curved. He's hot, though. You're dating his father, I hissed at him, horrified. You can't just say things like that. I speak only the truth, I threw my hands up. I hate this. I hate everything about this. I'm done with this conversation. A light began to blink up in the corner of the Queen's lair. Charlie laughed at me. Showtime. How convenient. I'm sure whatever else you were going to blather on about would have been not even remotely pointless. He picked up the mic sitting next to the camera. He switched it on and blew into it. People from below us began to cheer, knowing what was about to begin. I muttered threats under my breath as I leaned forward to watch the show. It wasn't going to be the same without the others here, but at least I could forget all the life lessons Charlie had just laid out for me. Ah, the spoils of youth. And I really did forget mostly when instead of the queen from Phoenix bursting out onto the stage, a familiar purr echoed around the bar as a leg clad in red fishnets stuck out from behind the curtain, long and slender. "The bitch is back," Helena Handbasket growled. The crowd went nuts. I turned wide-eyed to Charlie. And at me as he muffled the mic against his chest. "Told you that you needed to be here tonight. Surprise, Kori." The curtains parted as the lights flashed. Helena Handbasket burst out onto the stage. She was fierce and fabulous, and it hit me then that even though it had only been a couple of weeks, I'd missed my friends fiercely. "Damn right," she crowed into the microphone. "Did you cocksuckers think you could ever be rid of me?" She held the microphone close as everyone screamed at her. "I thought not. And if you did, go away. Because even though my vacation was restful and filled with adventures, I couldn't stay away forever. So I return to you, well-rested and confident, both as the powerful person I am. My boo can attest to that." "Jesus Christ," a voice filled with familiar disdain said from behind me. "I told her not to say that. I have a reputation to maintain." I whirled around. There, standing in the Queen's lair, the door closing behind them, were Paul and Vince Auster and the homo jock king, a constipated look on his disgustingly handsome face. I almost fell down trying to get to them. I did lose a shoe, but I'd worry about that later. Vince caught me as I jumped at him, wrapping those big arms around me as Paul squawked when I accidentally kicked him in the junk. "You bastards," I cried into Vince's ear. "What the hell?" "Hi, Kori," Vince said happily, squeezing me so tightly my back cracked. "We came back from our honeymoon early. Sandy said you were sad, and I know how much you like it when I hug you, so here I am. Got him it. I loved that asshole." I pulled back to glare at him, my legs still wrapped around his hips. "You should have told me." "Then it wouldn't be a surprise," Paul said, still holding his groin. "Also, keep your feet away from me. They're freakishly strong, and I'm sure I'm in pain." He laughed when Vince set me down and I went to him. He wrapped an arm around me, kissing the side of my head. "Hey, girl, looking good." I ignored the burning in my eyes. It had only been 2 weeks. "You too," I managed to say. "You look weirdly tan, like you should have a mustache and be saying inappropriate things to teenagers still in high school." He shoved me away. "That's it, moment over, get the hell off me." I turned to the homo jock king. "Darren." He glared at me. I waited. He sighed and opened his arms. When one gets an invitation from a king asshole, though he may be, one takes it. "It's good to see you," he muttered in my hair. "Sandy missed you. I didn't." "You're a liar," I whispered in his ear. He grunted but held on for a moment longer before letting me go. "Did we get her?" I heard Helena say from below. Charlie glanced back at us before raising the mic to his lips. "We did. Good job, Helena." "Damn right." "And oh, my babies, I have so many things to tell you. But first, let me take you back to a different time, when things made more sense. When the world was young and we didn't have a single care. When a former Mouseketeer all but performed something shocking." The crowd went nuts as Christina Aguilera's "Dirty" started playing overhead. And just like that, all was right again. In those moments that followed, I barely remembered what Charlie had said at all. Chapter 2. Teenagers are terrifying creatures who exist to cause chaos. I yawned as I came into the kitchen early Monday morning, my skinny tie loose at my throat. I hadn't had a good night's sleep the night before, nervous about my first day at Phoenix House. I didn't do very well with starting new anything, but today was a pretty big deal for me. Sanford Stewart was not a morning person. He told me he was a creature of the night, and that he shouldn't be seen in the early morning light unless it was by someone he was kicking out from the night before. Which is why it was so surprising he was already in the kitchen, dressed for work, and whistling cheerfully as he poured me a cup of coffee. The radio was on, playing NPR. I wasn't too fond of the news these days. "Good morning," he trilled far too loudly. "Blarg," I told him as I slumped into a chair at the table. "Indeed." He poured a terrible amount of creamer into the coffee. He knew me so well. He turned and set the mug in front of me, as well as a small paper sack that I hadn't seen him carrying. "There," he said, sounding pleased with himself. "You missed Hot Jogger Guy again this morning." Ah, yes. Hot Jogger Guy, Sandy's current obsession, much to Darren's consternation. Some random dude who jogged by our house almost every morning wearing nothing but tiny shorts and running shoes. If asked, Sandy wouldn't be able to describe him from the neck up, mostly because he was focused on the neck down and the way his body moved in his shorts. I hadn't seen him yet because he always came way too early. I poked the sack before going for the coffee. "What's that?" "Your lunch," he said, still standing above me expectantly. I turned slowly to look up at him. "My what?" he grinned. "I packed you a lunch for your first day of work." I groaned. "Why?" "Because it's a nice thing to do," he explained patiently. "And because I woke up really early, jet lag." I took a sip of coffee. It tasted like getting punched in the face with hazelnut. It was perfect. "You were in Vegas. You took a car." He shrugged and went back to the counter. "It's the thought that counts. Say thank you, Kori." "Thank you, Kori." He ignored my morning snark. "I'm just so thrilled. I imagine this is what having kids is like and being proud and such. Not that I'll ever really know that about children because they are terrifying, and I won't have them in my house unless I'm forced to. I wasn't awake enough for this." "I'm glad you're using me as a proxy, then." "Exactly. I'm pleased we're on the same page. I made you a peanut butter sandwich with bananas in it. I don't know why, just go with it. And if you throw it away because it sounds disgusting, don't tell me. My feelings will be hurt." I grimaced at the lunch bag. A sandwich with bananas on it was most likely an affront to God. "There's also carrot sticks," he said, as if he'd been replaced by a weird queer Mary Poppins. "I don't know where they came from. They're probably Dare's. But since I banished him from this house for 2 days, as I didn't want the spark to die after being around each other 24/7, you can have them." "So that wasn't him grunting like a poodle giving birth in your room last night?" I asked innocently. Sandy tossed a glare over his shoulder. "I was watching Animal Planet." "Uh-huh. And even if he was, it's not my fault that he can't stand to be away from me for longer than a few days. He can be needy, in case you didn't know." "Right. So you weren't talking to him on the phone last night when I was brushing my teeth, all but demanding he come over because you, and I quote, needed to hang out," Sandy sniffed. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "I bet you don't." I thought longingly about the day when I could afford my own place. I wouldn't have to hear Animal Planet ever again. Sandy and Darren were attractive people, but getting flustered by the sounds they made wasn't something I ever wished for. I told Sandy this once. The look on his face had been worth it. Sandy filled his own mug with coffee and brought it over to the table, then sat in the chair opposite me. I smiled sleepily at him. It was good to have him home. "You look tired," he said. "Scratch that." Fuck his entire face. "I thought we agreed we wouldn't tell each other that," he shrugged. "I told you to never tell me that. You're a baby still. Down a Red Bull and you'll be right as rain. If I tried that, I'd have heartburn for the rest of the day and still look like shit." "You're very pretty," I said dutifully. And he was. People tended to see him for Helena rather than Sandy, but those people were blind and stupid and didn't deserve him. "Thank you," he said. "You still look tired." Bitch. Truth hurts, I know. He stared at me over his coffee mug. Everything all, I swear to God, if you ask me if I'm all right, I'm going to fucking scream. I sat back in the chair so I wouldn't reach out and dump my coffee on his head. "Fair," he allowed. "It was late when I went to bed. Your light was still on. After you let Darren out," he ignored me. "I know how you can get sometimes. And it's okay to be nervous. It's a pretty big deal what you're going to be doing. I'm proud of you for it. It takes more compassion than I will ever have." "Ugh," I said, pressing my palms against my eyes. "Why do you have to be vomiting your feelings on me at 7 in the morning, and on a Monday, no less?" "Because I need to catch up for the last couple of weeks," Sandy said. "And Nana told me she saw Kori more than Kori while we were gone." I didn't need to have it spelled out for me. I knew what she meant. Being trans wasn't a big deal to anyone I knew. If anyone was ever uncomfortable with it, I'd learned early they weren't worth my time. I didn't need shit from people who couldn't see me for who I was, even when I was at my most confused. Bigenderism was almost predictable for me. I knew when something was happening, when I felt different. My thoughts didn't change. My brain was the same. It was just a filter through which I saw the world and wanted the world to see me. "It's nothing," I said, ready for this conversation to be over. "Okay," Sandy said, thankfully not pushing. He was good like that. "But if it ever is something, just let me know, and we'll do whatever you need. Pillow forts, getting in the car and driving away for a weekend, a sleepover with all of us and watching terrible TV, anything. Things might have changed a little, but that doesn't mean we can't do all the things we normally do." When are you and Darren getting married?" Sandy rolled his eyes. "Never. I don't believe in the institution of marriage. Paul and Vince are lovely, and I'm so happy for them, but it isn't for me." I snorted. "Right. I'll remember that when you're crying in front of all of us while vowing your eternal love to Darren." "Nah, I don't know that we need to be married for that. Darren knows how I feel about him, and I know he cares about me." "You've actually thought about this?" "Sometimes," he admitted. Then his eyes narrowed, a little bit of Helena coming forward. "And if you ever speak of this to anyone, I will hurt you where you stand." An empty threat, effective but empty. "Cross my heart, hope to die." "A billion needles in your eye," he agreed. Then, we talked about it a little after Paul and Vince. "I don't think it's for us, and he's on the same page. We're committed, so what does it matter? It's a piece of paper. We don't need it to validate us." "Maybe a little more than that," I said, amused. "And I'm pretty sure there are thousands of couples who would disagree with you." "And that's their right," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "But it's not something we need. It's awesome how so many queer couples can get married now. It was a hard-won fight, but all happy endings don't need to end in marriage. I love him. He loves me. That's enough." He paused, considering. "For now," I laughed. "You're so full of shit." His grin was razor-sharp. "Always, baby doll." I opened my mouth to make fun of him some more, but was interrupted by a bloviating idiot blaring from the radio. Jesus. I still don't know why they give him the time of day. Fuck him, seriously. Sandy shook his head. "It's all show. Loud noises and bright flashing lights. Almost like a drag queen, but without any of the charm. At least he's got a wig." He stood from his chair. "Pay him no mind. We've had almost 8 years of an awesome black man in charge. There's no way the people of this country will allow someone like this idiot to become the next president. I have more faith in us than that. Not much, but at least a little, you'll see. Everything will be fine. Now finish up so we can get on the road." That startled me. "Excuse me," he had that look in his eyes that told me he was up to no good. "I'm driving you to your first day. Nope, not gonna happen. I'll take the bus and that will be that. But no, I said, and that's final. Okay, he said with a shrug. Got him it, I muttered as Sandy drove us downtown. I don't even know how this happened. It's best if you just let me do what I want, Sandy said, peering at me over his oversized sunglasses. He said they made him look like a 50s starlet. I told him they made it look like his head had shrunk. Somehow I hadn't been murdered and buried in a shallow grave out in the desert. You have to know how that sounds. He hummed under his breath. The music blaring from the stereo was far too club-like for a Monday morning. Some diva was wailing electronically about emotions, and the windows were down. It was warm already, with the promise of hot later. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the headrest. I was nervous, but I told myself it was just a case of first-day jitters. It had been so long since I'd had an actual job that I'd forgotten what first days could be like. But I'd worked hard to get the position at Phoenix House and wasn't going to let my nerves get the better of me. I opened my eyes when the car slowed, hoping we weren't stuck in construction or a jam traffic in Tucson was the worst. I was surprised to see Sandy had pulled up next to the curb in front of a small, squat building at the edge of downtown Tucson. Bright rainbow flags hung from the exterior, and a sign outside cheerfully proclaimed it as Phoenix House, the words printed with flames coming up from each of the letters. How are we here already? I demanded. Sandy shrugged. You were snoring, told you that you were tired. Okay, fine. I guess I should just go inside. He reached over and took my hand in his. His fingers were long and slender and fit against mine perfectly. You're going to do amazing, he said quietly. Changing lives and all that. I bet years from now, they'll have a gaudy statue of you right there on the sidewalk that will be beautiful at first, but then will end up being a perch for birds to poop on. I hate you so much, I growled at him. No, you don't, but if it makes you feel any better, I'll walk you inside. He let go of me and reached for his seat belt. No, I said quickly, struggling to get out of the car, the seat belt pulling against my chest. Do not do that. Absolutely do not. Gonna do it, he sang, finger pressing threateningly against the button. I managed to make it out of the car without loss of limb or life. It was close. I slammed the door behind me and turned around to glare at him through the window. He wasn't fazed. He rolled the window down slowly, his smile widening. You forgot your backpack. Your special lunch is inside. I made it with bananas and love. I won't eat it, I said savagely. In fact, I'm going to give it to the first homeless person I find. Only you could make a threat empathetic. He wiped a fake tear as he sniffled. You're growing up right before my eyes. I reached in and grabbed my backpack, intending on turning around and storming inside just so I wouldn't have to listen anymore. I'd almost made it when he called my name. I glanced over my shoulder at him. He had his phone raised. I heard a camera shutter sound as he pressed a finger against the screen. For your first day. He shouted maniacally as people walked by on the sidewalk, staring at us curiously. We have to have memories. Do good work, my sweet angel. The bystanders hurried away. Sandy laughed as he pulled away from the curb. I couldn't believe I ever felt relieved he'd come home. Phoenix House was bright and spacious, the inside far bigger than it seemed from the outside. It was the first thing I'd noticed when I'd come for the first in a series of interviews last spring. The walls were brick and painted white, with a 15-foot rainbow painted on the far wall. The ductwork overhead was exposed, giving it an industrial look. The building had once been an art gallery, but had sat empty until Phoenix House had opened last year. There'd been another LGBTQ youth center in Tucson called Wingspan, but that had closed a while back due to lack of funding. Given the size of Tucson's LGBTQ population, it was a harsh blow, especially to the queer kids. This new center had opened with a solid backing in place, though funding was always going to be an issue. It was a nonprofit. Donations and grants were the only reason it existed in the first place. The problem with that was Tucson was a blue speck in a sea of red. It was only 3 years ago that Arizona came close to being one of those states, trying to pass a bathroom law requiring people to use the restroom of their assigned gender. I was pleasantly surprised when it failed. The fact that centers like Wingspan and Phoenix House still struggled was not surprising. Phoenix House was meant to be a youth center, but it also was a community outreach group. And since there was no other place like it in Tucson, it had a few beds in the back for people who needed them, rare though it was, a psychologist who worked pro bono, and contacts with queer-friendly drug treatment facilities. Sometimes it felt overstuffed, like it was trying to do too much with too little, but it worked. The director who'd conducted my final interview in April had been nice, but he was a lawyer, one of Tucson's rich super gays, and he'd had to take a leave of absence due to his day job. I hadn't met the interim summer director yet. There were a couple of kids sitting over near a carpeted area on the floor, leaning back against old sofas that had been donated. School was out for the summer, and though I expected there to be more of them, it was still early. One was a tiny Latinx boy with a spiky black mohawk and a rainbow bar through his eyebrow. He glanced over at me, eyes narrowing suspiciously. The other didn't even look up. Their shaved head was bowed over their phone, fingers typing furiously. I stood near the entrance, unsure why I was uncomfortable. They were just kids, not much younger than I was, but I still felt nervous about it. "Kori," a bright and cheerful voice said, "You made it." I turned my head, relieved. An older woman was walking toward me, a wide smile on her face. She wore jeans and a loose-fitting blouse. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her name was Marina, and as far as Phoenix House was concerned, she was in charge. I'd interviewed with her twice before moving on to the former director. She was, as she told me, an original gangster lesbian. In another life before she retired, she'd worked for the county in management at Public Works. Bonded over our disdain of Andrew Taylor, Vince and Darren's father and former mayor of Tucson, who was currently enjoying freedom while waiting to be tried on a bunch of charges. "I'm so glad you showed up," she said, stopping to stand in front of me. She was carrying a clipboard and a stubby pencil was stuck behind her ear. I shifted nervously. "You're welcome. I said I would. You did give me the job, right? I didn't just hallucinate that whole thing," she laughed. "No, I don't think so. Not unless I did too, but I haven't dropped acid since the 70s, so it's unlikely. God, I hoped I could be as cool as her one day." "That's good to know. I'm pretty sure drugs are frowned upon here." "Of course they are," Marina said. "That doesn't mean I don't smoke a joint every now and then, but who doesn't?" I didn't, but I nodded politely. It seemed like the right thing to do. "We weren't sure if you would be here," she said, glancing down at her clipboard. "No, you kids have a lot more opportunities these days, but we appreciate it." I was confused. "Why wouldn't I be here?" She looked back up at me. "Of course you wouldn't know," she sighed. "We chose you and one other." The skin around her eyes tightened. "I came in this morning to an email from her saying that she reconsidered and took another internship. Just like that, no notice at all." "That seriously sucks," I said, angrier than I expected. "Why would you do something like that?" She shrugged. "It happens." I will admit that leaves us in a bit of a bind. We need all the unpaid labor we can get." Her eyes widened. "Wow, that might have been offensive. I apologize." I waved it away. "I know what you meant. Still, that's a shitty thing she did to you." "Perhaps. But I should still remember to watch what I say." She smiled ruefully. "So many people make the accusations that we're becoming too politically correct these days. But isn't it happening for a reason? Things aren't like they used to be. More and more are coming forward with who they are, and it's up to us to listen to what they're telling us. Speaking of." She pulled the pencil from her ear and lowered it to the clipboard. "What pronoun should I use to address you?" I blinked. "What? I remember your bigender, and it's important to me to get it right." I fidgeted again. "He and him is fine with how I am now." She nodded as she scribbled something on the clipboard. "If I ever make a mistake and call you the wrong name or pronoun or whatever, I expect you to point it out to me. It's how I'll learn. Deal?" "Deal." "Good," she said. "Let me show you to your desk. I'm afraid it isn't much, but it should work for now." "Follow me, please." She turned, and I almost crashed into her back when she stopped. I peered over her shoulder as she looked toward the kids near the sofas. "Diego, Kai, say hello to Kori. He'll be a fixture around here this summer. And if we're lucky, I'll be able to convince him to never leave us." I didn't know what to say to that. This was always going to be a temporary position, one that would look good on my resume. It was important work, sure, but I also had my future to worry about. The cost of living in Tucson was relatively cheap compared to other cities of the same size. But that didn't mean I could afford to live off next to nothing, especially if I ever wanted to move out of Sandy's house. Diego looked up at me, arching an eyebrow. He grunted. It sounded like he said "S up," but since I didn't speak teenager, I couldn't be sure. If I was being honest, teenagers scared the holy hell out of me. The other one Kai didn't raise their head from their phone. Marina sighed. "I'm afraid that's as good as it's probably going to get." She raised her voice and said, "Because some people still need to learn their manners." She shook her head and started walking farther into Phoenix House. "They're here early," I said as I followed her. She glanced back at me. "Usually are. They don't really have any other place to go. Kai's in foster care. The foster parents get the checks from the state and put a roof over their head, but that's about as far as the parenting goes. Diego is," she seemed to catch herself. "Well, he's got his mom. They both just finished their junior year, and while I'm trying to convince them to get jobs, no dice so far." "Oh," was all I could say to that. "But it's all right," she said as she led me toward an old door near the back of Phoenix House. "I love having them all here, especially now that school is out. Teenagers with nothing to do can sometimes find themselves in unruly situations. I give them breakfast and the code to the Wi-Fi, and they help me around here. They painted the rainbow mural on the wall last week to help us in our celebration of Pride Month." "It's nice," I replied dutifully. She beamed at me as she opened the door. "I think so too. You'll get to know them, I'm sure. They can be a little, well, they're 17 years old. I'm sure you remember what that's like better than I can." I could. 17-year-olds were assholes. I had been a 17-year-old asshole. And though I'd gotten over it quicker than I expected, the thought still terrified me. But it wasn't enough to make me doubt why I was here, why I'd wanted to work at Phoenix House in the first place. The room she'd led me to was small. It was made even smaller by the fact that 3 desks were placed against 3 different walls. It would be crowded with 3 people sharing the same space. 2 of the desks were empty, chipped old things that looked as if they'd seen better days. The 3rd desk belonged to Marina. There was a framed picture on the desk showing her and her partner of a few decades smiling widely while wearing mouse ears at Disneyland. "This is us," she said, as if it were the greatest reveal in the world. "It's nice," I said. She laughed. "You liar, but that's okay. You probably won't spend a whole lot of time in here, if I'm being honest. Aside from all the paperwork I can't wait to have you do for me, we usually are out and about. I mostly find myself in here when I need a break from all the noise. And now that it's summer, I expect to use it a little more for that. Not that it's a complete escape. It's an old building, after all." She pointed up toward a large vent near the ceiling. "If people are in the director's office having a meeting, you can hear everything they're saying. Just ignore it if you can. You brought your laptop." I nodded as I set my backpack on one of the empty desks. "I downloaded the programs you emailed to me too, so I should be ready to go, and I filled out all the paperwork." "That's good," she said, leaning against her desk. "We won't worry about that right away. Few things you need to do first." Adulting was hard. Like. She glanced down at her watch before looking at her clipboard. "You're going to meet with our interim director this morning, just so you can introduce yourself and get to know each other. He's a great guy, and we're very lucky to have him on loan. If I had my way, I'd steal him and keep him here forever, but I don't think that'll happen. Like you, we have him for the summer. But I'm going to do everything I can to make sure both of you see how great this place is, so you won't ever want to leave." I looked at her. "That sounds almost threatening." "It is," she said, eyes crinkling. "I find threats of happiness work better than anything else, and he's excited to meet you. I don't think he's had a chance to review your file yet since he's been trying to get himself situated, but you two can go over that together. I'm sure if he has any questions, you can." She was interrupted when my phone beeped annoyingly from my bag. "Shit," I muttered as I unzipped the front pocket. Sorry, didn't put it on vibrate. This morning was I didn't sleep well last night." "It's fine," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Our phones are extensions of ourselves these days. My wife thinks we're going to evolve with longer necks that are always curved downward. She's funny like that." I glanced down at the screen to see the family thread lighting up. I tapped the box and pulled up the messages. "Paula Shore, you're going to nail it. And if you don't, I will buy the Ben and Jerry's and we can eat and cry together. Savindaran, Maine. Sandy said I had to tell you good luck. I dream off Vince. I love you, you got dis. Nana Banana, Siuxes, see if you can steal a stapler. Elmau Madmedi, we're so proud of you. Larry Berry, take pictures." Before I set my phone down, another, separate message popped up. "Mighty good luck today, I miss you." I smiled. "Good news." I looked back up at Marina as I silenced my phone. "Some friends wishing me luck." She smiled knowingly. "It's good to have people, isn't it?" "It is," she nodded. "It's one of the reasons I believe in this place. I want to make sure others know they have that too. In this day and age when things are so uncertain, it's nice to know there's a place these kids can go and be themselves, free from judgment. Many of them don't have the support network they should, and even worse, can be targeted for just existing at all." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped on the screen for a moment before holding it out to me. Case in point. There was a stark headline across the screen on a website I didn't recognize. "Why isn't there a heterosexual Pride Month?" I rolled my eyes. The straights are at it again. She shoved her phone back into her pocket. "I won't subject you to the rest of the drivel, but I try to read everything so I can see all sides. It's nonsense, of course, but it just goes to show how far we still have to go. The internet has vast resources and can connect people from all over the world, but it can also give people hiding behind cartoon avatars the ability to be racist, homophobic, and misogynistic without any repercussions. and it's certainly not helping that our current political climate is. Unreal, I said. She smiled tightly. That about sums it up. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. What's important is the work we do today so that it turns into something grand tomorrow. And I'm happy you're here to help with that. It probably helps too that I'm a diversity hire, I said dryly. She laughed loudly, head tilting back. Oh my, I knew I liked you for a reason. Yes, I suppose that's one way of looking at it. Biracial, bigender, sure. That looks good for us. But what matters more to me is that you're a good person. I couldn't care less about all the rest, though the higher-ups might disagree with me. I knew from the moment I met you that you'd make a great addition here, regardless of whether you ticked those extra special boxes. You're fierce and funny and bright. Exactly what this place needs. Don't ever think otherwise. I was touched. I wasn't used to people I didn't know very well being so kind. She glanced down at her watch again. We should probably get you over to meet with the director. I've got phone calls to make, donations to solicit. The usual, it never ends. I thought hard. What about jacket? She looked surprised. What really, you think they'd do that? I shrugged. I don't see why not. Do you know anyone over there? I snorted. You could say that. I was above name-dropping. I was above name-dropping. I was above one of my best friends is Helena Handbasket, and I know the owner. Well, Helena knows him better, but I've got an in. Whoa, she breathed. That's impressive. I'll have to think about it. Can I get back to you? Sure. I almost hoped she'd say no so I wouldn't have to go talk to Mike at any point. I didn't like to remember that he existed, much less think about him. We stopped in front of another door just down the hall from our office. There was an open transom window above it resting on gold chains. I could hear more voices coming from out in the front of Phoenix House. They all sounded young. Ah, Marina said. Sounds like the cavalry has arrived. I'll go deal with them while you're meeting with Jeremy. I froze as she reached up and knocked on the door, 3 loud raps against the wood. Her smile faded as she glanced back at me. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head. It's nothing. I must have misheard you. I thought you said I'm meeting with. The door opened. A man stood in the doorway, green eyes sparkling behind thick gray frames. His black beard was fuller than it had been when I'd seen him last through the stacks at the library. He wore jeans and a tight white button-down shirt that pulled against his shoulders and chest. His eyes widened. His jaw dropped. Jeremy Olsen said, Kori, what are you doing here? My hot former professor was now my hot current boss. God fucking damn it. Chapter 3. I am so fucking screwed, the non-porn edition. Since I could barely breathe, I could barely speak. So I stood there, gaping like a fish out of water, wondering what I'd done in a past life to deserve such torment in this one. At the very least, I must have been a terrible bank robber whose reign of terror across the country ended in a hail of bullets. Either that or I'd been a cannibal. Marina looked back and forth between us, brow furrowing. Do you two know each other? Jeremy, no. Professor Olsen recovered first. You could say that. He smiled crookedly, the lines on his face deepening in a way that should not have been as attractive as it was. I mean, his dark hair was sticking up all over the place like someone had been tugging on it, and that line of thinking needed to stop immediately. And there were flecks of gray in both his hair and his beard. It was like I'd been punched in the gut. Kori was a student in one of my graduate courses at the U of A, a great one at that. Oh, Marina said, sounding excited. This is going to make things so much easier, given that you two have a history. History, I squeaked. There's no history. This isn't historic. They both stared at me. I rebounded gracefully. I mean, what's going on? What's the haps? Yo, dog. Marina looked curious but shook her head. Well then, I'll just leave you to it. But don't keep him for too long, Jeremy. I plan on putting him to work right away. You're not coming in with me? I asked her. Nope, she said, oblivious to what I was sure was a look of panic on my face. I've got things to do, and I want Jeremy to have some time with you before we get busy. That didn't sound so good. In fact, that sounded terrible. Maybe we could come on in, Kori, Professor Olsen said as he stepped back into the office. Marina turned and began to walk back down the hall. I didn't know her very well, but I couldn't believe she was betraying me like this. Who the fuck did she think she was? I would have my revenge, and she wouldn't see it coming. I weighed my options. I could either go into the office with Professor Olsen or flee this place and move to North Dakota and change my name. And since the very idea of living in North Dakota sounded terrible, I swallowed thickly and walked past Professor Olsen into his office. He closed the door behind me. I was trapped. This is a wonderful surprise, he said, and he sounded like he meant it. Curse him. Marina was telling me last week how excited she was for you to be here. I don't know why I didn't put two and two together. He smiled again, and my heart raced. But this is going to make this summer even better. I'm a little out of my depth here, and it'll be good to have someone I know and trust working with me. I choked on my tongue, his brow furrowed. Are you all right? No, I was pretty sure I was dying. Yes, I managed to say, I'm fine. Here, let me get you some water. He stepped around me into the office, heading for a small refrigerator against the far wall. The office looked similar to when I'd been in it last for my final interview. The personal belongings for the prior director were gone, of course, but the desk was the same, and the Professor Olsen bent over to the fridge, his jeans pulling tight. I made a sound that I'm not proud of, almost like a barking dog. A poodle, perhaps. He glanced back at me over his shoulder. I looked up at the ceiling. Here we are, he said, standing back upright. He had a plastic water bottle in his hands. He started to unscrew the cap, frowned when it wouldn't twist, and tried harder. Since apparently my lot in life was to suffer, Professor Olsen managed to unscrew the cap, only to have some of the water slop out against his shirt. It soaked through immediately above his right nipple, and it was then I decided that the religious right was correct and God did hate homosexuals, because surely he was torturing me at this very moment. Shit, Professor Olsen muttered. That didn't go like I thought it would, he laughed as he shook his head. Guess I don't know my own strength sometimes. I do, I breathed. He cocked his head. What was that? Nothing at all. I told myself to get it together. Who the fuck was this bumbling fool whose body I seemed to inhabit? I wasn't like this. I was cool. I was calm. I was collected. I didn't take shit from nobody, and I kicked ass and took names. It was time to man up. You can have my shirt if you want. Fuck me upside the head. He looked confused. But then what would you wear? Oh, right, I said hastily. Yeah, there's that. It's just water. It'll dry. Besides, I don't think your shirt would fit me. I'm a bit bigger than you, in case you couldn't tell. Oh gee, I hadn't noticed. Thank you for pointing that out to me, Professor Olsen. Now I won't be able to stop thinking about it. Would the buttons pop off? Would the shoulders tear? The seams splitting over? I managed to take the bottle from him without creepily caressing his fingers or dropping it. I was proud of myself. Thank you. He went around the other side of the desk and sat in the chair behind it. He motioned for me to sit opposite him. I made it to the other chair without embarrassing myself further, something that had been entirely possible seeing as how my legs felt like jelly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. It was going to be okay. Then my brain said, "Hey." "No," I snapped back. "Do you remember that scene you watched where the smaller dude got pushed over a desk just like this one by a bigger dude? You watched that 4 times in 6 hours. 2 of those times were intense. You got excited." I started singing in my head to drown it out. "Are you humming?" Professor Olsen asked me. I smiled at him, sure it was borderline crazed. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Yeah," my brain said above a terrifying rendition of What a Friend We Have in Jesus. I didn't know why I picked that song, but it wasn't working. Right over the desk. It was all like bam, 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 oh yes, harder, harder, give it to me. "Wreck my butt," he let it go. Well, I wasn't kidding when I said this is a wonderful surprise. He leaned forward, resting his strong forearms on the desk. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and he had this vein on his right arm that was obscene. It was so veiny. His cardiovascular health was on point. "It's good to see a friendly face around here. Marina's great, and the kids I've met so far too, but I'm just happy you're here." "Me too," I said, and for reasons I couldn't explain, it sounded an octave lower. I coughed. "I mean, I didn't. What are you doing here?" He ducked his head, almost like he was shy. "I don't rightly know," he admitted. "Stephen, the prior director, is a friend of mine, but his firm recently took on a big case and needed all hands on deck to defend a client in a trial this fall. He didn't have the time for that and working here, so he had to let it go. I told him a while back that I wanted to do something different this summer, get out of the classroom for a bit, and he called me and asked if I could take his place until they found someone more permanent." He smiled and shook his head. I'd had a couple of glasses of wine when he called and didn't think things through very well. His smile softened. "Okay, maybe more than a couple." He agreed to do something charitable while drunk. He was a perfect human man. I hated everything about him. And since I was distracted by my hatred, I said, "You're friends with the super gays." He blinked. "The what now?" "The super gays. It's what my friend Sandy calls them. The rich white you know what, never mind. Forget I even said that, I don't know what I'm talking about, obviously." "Oh yeah," my brain moaned, "this desk is so sturdy. Push me, push wow at a friend we have in Jesus." He looked amused. "I doubt that. You've always been extraordinarily articulate." I told myself not to swoon over what was essentially me being told I talked too much. "Thank you. How have you been? Haven't seen you really since your friend's wedding. Sorry about crashing that again, by the way." "It was fine," I said. "The more the merrier." That didn't make sense, like at all. I tried again. "I've been busy, you know how it is. The closer to graduation, the less time I have for anything else." He chuckled. "I remember those days. I don't envy you in the slightest. Next year is your last, right?" I almost convinced myself that he was stalking me, and it was the most romantic thing that ever happened to me. And since that was fucked up, I chose to ignore it. "Yeah, last year. That's exciting. Know what you're going to do yet?" I shook my head. "I'm trying not to think about it. It's heavy." He sat back in his chair again. The vein disappeared, which I was grateful for. "It is. But you've got a good head on your shoulders, Kori. Know that you're going to do great things, no matter what it is you decide to do." He nodded toward the door. "Just don't let Marina steamroll you into staying here if that's something you don't want to do. She's great, but she's also exuberant." "That's it," he said. "Exuberant. She's already tried to convince me to leave the university and stay here full time. Though now, that doesn't seem like such a bad idea." My face grew hot. Thank Christ for my darker skin. Yeah. Dad seems to be happy." That righted things a bit. "Is that so?" He shrugged. "Think so." I narrowed my eyes at him. You're not trying to get information from me about your dad's love life, are you? He groaned, putting his face in his hands. You don't have to say it like that. I don't want to think about my dad having any kind of love life. Did he tell you how they met? I asked gleefully. There were prostates involved. He dropped his hands to glare at me. I know, and I don't like how happy that makes you sound. You're evil. I don't know why I couldn't see that before. I have no idea what you're talking about, Professor Olsen. I'm positively innocent, he snorted. I have a hard time believing that, and it's Jeremy, Kori. And once again, everything was topsy-turvy. What? He looked smug. It's Jeremy. None of that Professor Olsen crap. We're not in class. In fact, I'm not even your professor anymore. So call me Jeremy from here on out, okay? Jeremy, I repeated, somehow making it come out without sighing. And if you want to know anything about your father's life, I relished the look of horror on his face far too much. You should probably ask him. I don't know anything about it. Your dad makes Charlie happy, and I think Robert feels the same. He does, Jeremy muttered. It's sickening. I heard him singing the other day in the shower. He's a terrible singer. That caught me off guard. You two live together. We do. I feel better knowing I can keep an eye on him, though he'll tell you it's only so he can keep an eye on me. We're pretty much all each other's got, so it works for us. We manage to keep out of each other's way for the most part, and now that he's seeing Charlie, I know he's in good hands. He pulled a face. I shouldn't have said it like that. Very good hands. Charlie is, he pointed at me. Not another word. I mimed, zipping my lips together. That's better. You'll call me Jeremy, and I'll keep on calling you. He looked flustered for a moment. Then, I know you're bigender and you know. Sometimes identify as female, he winced. I'm probably not going about this the best way. I apologize if anything sounds off. Correct me if I ever get anything wrong, okay? I want to do right by you and everyone else here. So if it's Kori with a C, that's fine. And Kori with a K, that's fine too. You don't need to feel like you can't be whoever you need to be. It doesn't matter to me either way, or anyone here. All I ask is that you help us make Phoenix House an even better place for our community. He was fumbling, but it was sweetly endearing. I'd heard far crueler ways of going about it. Oh sure, we lived in 2016, and queers could get married like everyone else, and in some states fired just for existing. But there were still many, many douchebags in the world. Thanks. That's good to know. He seemed relieved, not like he was happy that conversation was out of the way, but more that I'd understood. Or at least I hoped that was the case. I didn't think now was the right time to discuss the fact that I had a lot of his facial expressions memorized from the 2 semesters I had with him, sitting in the 3rd row from the front, forcing myself to take notes instead of watching every movement he made. It seemed better that way for the both of us. Great. Now I'm going to need to get a little more authoritative for a moment, if that's all right. Oh God, yes, my brain moaned. Tell us what to do. Make us your bitch. Singing church hymns in my head while my brain was tuned to the porn channel seemed like a one-way ticket to hell. There was nothing I could do about that now. That sounds ominous. He shook his head. Nah, I just want to get a few things out of the way. I wasn't expecting you to be, well, you. It's a good thing, he added quickly. But I need to regroup for a moment here. Do some boss things, he winced. You're okay with me being your boss? Well, your boss's boss. I have no problem with that whatsoever, I told him, already sure this summer was going to see more jizz going into a towel than ever before. I'd have to go to Bed Bath and Beyond to buy more. I wondered if Nana had a coupon. He leaned forward again, the vein making another appearance as he picked up a pen from the desk. He flipped open a folder and glanced down at it before looking back up at me. Why are you here? I blinked. Because Marina told me you wanted to talk to me, Jeremy snorted. That's good to know. But I meant, why did you choose Phoenix House? You're getting your master's in social work, right? I nodded. That's the plan. That's a lot of work. And if you do go into social services, that's a tough job. Many people wash out. It can take a lot out of a person. Most jobs, you leave for the day and go home and don't have to worry about it until you go back the next day. With social work, I imagine that it follows you no matter where you go. I frowned. I can handle it. His eyes widened. Oh, that's not what I meant. I wasn't suggesting you couldn't. I'm just curious as to, I don't know. The why of it, I guess. He smiled ruefully. And you can tell me to fuck off, honestly. If I'm pushing you into something you don't want to talk about, let me know. Almost, and it sucked because there were days, hell, even stretches of weeks and months that I didn't think about it. But every now and then it would hit me from out of nowhere. I took a deep breath. No, it's okay. I mean, I'm going to have to get used to talking about it, I think. Marina knows some of it because we talked about it during the interviews. And if I go to work for Pima County or wherever after I graduate, they're going to ask the same thing. It's also going to be part of my practicum. My academic advisor said it'll personalize my thesis. Give it more credibility. His brow furrowed. How so? I shrugged awkwardly. I was in the system, he sighed. Shit, I didn't know that, I'm sorry. For what? It wasn't your fault. I know, he said. That's not I mean, that had to have been tough. I rubbed the back of my neck. I survived. You did, he agreed. And I'm pretty sure we're all better off for it. Damn him. Smooth motherfucker. I was in foster care for a long time. I didn't know my parents. They were, I don't know. I was told a little bit about who they were and what I found a mostly empty closet down the hall from Jeremy's office. There was an old mop and bucket inside, as well as what looked like 5 million rolls of toilet paper. The closet smelled like feet, but it would do for what I needed it for. I looked both ways down the hall before stepping inside and closing the door behind me. I pulled out my phone and highlighted a phone number to an insurance company. It took a few prompts through the phone tree before I put in the extension I needed. The line connected. This is Sandy, how can I help you? Code Orange Banana, I whispered harshly. It was the code we'd made up for a non-life-threatening emergency that was still pretty terrible, but meant no one was dying or on fire. We hadn't had a chance to use it before because it was oddly specific. He would know exactly what I was talking about. Silence. Then, what? Code Orange Banana. Sir, are you having a stroke? This is an insurance company. For cars, you need to hang up and dial 911. Is your face drooping? Oh my God, please don't die on the phone with me. I will be traumatized if you do. What the hell are you? It's me. Code Orange Banana. Code Orange Banana. I heard him muffle the phone and talk to someone else. I don't know. It's some man screaming something at me about bananas. Jesus, how is it still Monday morning? I swear it feels like we've been here for 6 years already. It's not even 10 yet. Paul, are you listening? Pay attention to me, I'm about to save someone's life. Google stroke symptoms and how to save someone. I can't because my hands are shaking. No, not because I'm scared. I've had 6 cups of coffee already. I needed them. What? I know that's too much, but Darren was all up in my business last night like you wouldn't believe. You know, for someone who is so. He really doesn't mind taking it up the what. What are you talking about? Oh, right, stroke symptoms. Okay, what's the first one? I hated them both so much. He came back on the line. Okay, sir, are you still alive? Do you have weakness in your arms and legs? Is your vision blurry? You already are having trouble speaking, but Code Orange Banana. I bellowed into the phone. He sniffed. No need to shout, sir. I'm trying to be amazing. And I'll come visit you in the hospital after, and we'll promise to stay in touch. But most likely we'll drift apart even though there's some kind of life debt. You won't owe me a thing. It's the least I could owe, oh my God. Orange banana, finally. Yes, yes. Right, he moaned into the phone. I can't even remember the last time I had orange Julius. They made the best smoothies. Does that store still exist? They were in malls, right? Are there still malls? I can't remember the last time I was in a mall. Paul. Paul, when was the last time we went to a mall? Was it, oh, that's right. Christ. That would have been in our early 20s hot topic days when we thought we were the type who went to raves. Remember those JNCO jeans we used to wear? And those beaded bracelets? What the hell were we thinking? How were we not murdered, going out into the middle of the desert to dance to happy hardcore from a pimple-faced DJ who was probably 14 years old? I mean, that's the stupidest code, orange banana. Why does that sound? Wait, is this Kori? I was going to choke a motherfucker out as soon as we got home. Yes, I hissed at him through the phone. Why didn't you just say so? Sandy demanded. Why would you let me think that you were dying of a stroke? Do you know how bad I felt? I'm not even wearing the right tie for being interviewed on TV after saving your life. I will burn down everything you hold dear, I snarled at him. Hold, please. Cheery music began to play. I swear to God it was an easy-listening music version of Rihanna's S&M. It was nice. It only took a moment for the line to be picked up again. Right about the time I was mumbling along that whips and chains excited me. You still there? Yes. And we need a new code, because apparently you don't know what the fuck you're doing with the old one. I've had a very rough day, he said. Hold on. We're in an empty office, and I need to figure out how to put you on speaker. If I hang up on you, feel free to continue bitching into the silence. It'll save us all a good amount of time. The phone clicked in my ear before it took on a staticky quality. There, Sandy said, sounding louder. Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, Kori. I breathed a sigh of relief. Hi, Vince. What the hell is going on? Paul asked. Sandy made me look up stroke symptoms, and then we talked about Hot Topic, and now I want a smoothie. Do you know what smoothies do for me? Nothing. They're pointless. Please, I said through gritted teeth. Continue making this about you even though I'm the one who called a code orange banana. Vince laughed. I get the smoothie thing now, that's fun. I couldn't be mad at him. That was like being angry at the sun for shining or alcohol for existing. He made everything better. What's wrong? Sandy asked, and for the first time he actually sounded worried. Is everything going okay? You haven't even been there 2 hours. Were kids mean to you? I swear to God, if some little shit was trying to start something, I'm going to march down there and commit a fucking felony. No, I moaned into the phone. It's not the kids, it's worse. Worse than teenagers, Paul asked. That's impossible. There's nothing worse than teenagers. They have memes and an underserved sense of accomplishment. There was a girl at the grocery store talking into her phone, and it sounded like she was speaking in tongues. Wig this and froyo that. It's my boss, I said, cutting him off before he really got going. I loved Paul, but if he got going, then Sandy would too, and then neither of them would shut up. There was a beat of silence. Then, what about him? Vince asked. Is he mean? I don't like mean bosses. I'm not a mean boss. Paul snorted. That's because all of the people who work under you wish they were actually under you. Oh, Vince said. That explains a lot. One of the girls asked me last week if I could show her how many push-ups I could do. I thought that was weird because we're at work. But then a lot of people started watching, and it was fun. Good Lord, Sandy said, sounding disgusted. We definitely need to have another sexual harassment seminar. And why the hell were we not informed so we could watch? "That's my husband," Paul snapped. "I know that's your husband. I was there." "That doesn't mean I don't want to see him do push-ups while wearing a suit and tie." "I mean, Jesus, Paul, I'm only human. Look at him. His smile is just so bright." "Vince, cover your smile." And even though I wasn't there, I knew Vince was doing exactly that. "My boss isn't mean," I said, trying to get us back on track. "He's wonderful." "Oh," Sandy said. "Then what's the problem? You could do worse than that, you know." "It's Jeremy Olsen." Deafening silence. Then, "Kori," Paul asked. "You repeat that again?" "Because the line cut out and we just want to make sure we heard you right." "The director," I whispered ferociously, "of Phoenix House is Jeremy Olsen." Thunderous silence. Sandy said, "Hold please." More music began to play. It was a version of Adele's Hello, which sounded like it had been arranged for a fifth-grade orchestra where every child played the recorder. I wanted to stab myself in the ears just to make it stop. Thankfully, it didn't last long before they returned. "Hi, baby doll," Sandy said in a simpering voice. The one I knew that meant everyone on the other end of the line was now completely full of shit, and that I should hang up before things got worse. Oh, how the tables had turned. Life was so much easier when I wasn't the focus. "How are you?" "Don't," I warned them. "Don't even think about can it, Ellis," Paul snapped, playing his role with gusto. "We don't have time for your shit." "Now, Paul," Sandy said, "that's not fair. We should sympathize with our dear friend and help him through his time of need." "Wait a minute," I said slowly. "Are you doing good cop, bad cop, corrupt cop? But that doesn't make sense because I'm not in it. And if Sandy is good cop and Paul is bad cop, that means Vince is corrupt cop," Vince agreed. "I don't really know what we're doing, but Paul said that anyone who looks at me is automatically corrupted, so that's cool." "I don't know if I could actually be corrupt, because that sounds rude." "He was hit on by a priest," Paul said, "at Christmas Mass. Nana made us go because she said she'd found Jesus, but I swear to God she was running a grift." "Okay," I said. "Don't think we're not coming back to that later, because what the fuck? But now's not the time for your ridiculous games." "It's no fun when you're on the other side, is it?" Sandy asked. "Oh, I feel just terrible. I'm sorry, Kori." This was really insensitive of us. I was touched. "Thank you, that was very nice of you to accept it's bullshit," Paul bellowed. "Because we're still going to do this." "Whoa," Vince said. "I'm really starting to get into this." "Paul, yell some more, yell right in my face." "Oh no," Sandy said, sounding disgusted. "They're doing it again. They're getting close." Ah, yes. The unfortunate side effect of our best friends getting married. Ever since they said "I do," it was as if they'd been infected by a closeness virus, as everything seemed to draw them together. Vince working out wearing nothing but his tiny shorts that left very little to the imagination. Check. Paul eating canned peaches directly from the can. Check. Vince shirtless and wearing a tool belt while fixing the gutters at their house. Check. Paul yelling after Wheels shit on the new rug that had been a wedding gift. Check. I'd walked in on them being intimate more times than I cared to think about in the last few months, and I didn't even live with them. And while the view wasn't always terrible, the fact that Vince liked to announce he had learned how to be really close really didn't do a lot to help the situation. Especially since he'd told me this while lying on top of me, as he was wont to do. He didn't understand the concept of personal space, that one. Get out of the splash zone. I yelled at Sandy. "We're fine," Paul said roughly, and if I never had to hear what his intimate voice sounded like again, I'd be just grand. "We can contain it." "Are you sure?" Vince asked. "Because I think we need to go count the highlighters again." "I really wish I didn't know what that meant," I muttered. "Can we please focus back on me?" "Sorry," Paul said. "You're right, I must resist the call of Vince's presence." I'm bendy, Vince said. Did you know we figured out I can almost, wow, Sandy said. That must be hereditary. Darren can do the same. I'm going to hang up, you fuckers, I growled at them. No, they all said at the same time. Don't, Sandy said. We're glad you called us. Seriously, Kori, Paul said. We're here for you. I give the best advice, Vince said. Everyone says so. Now, what seems to be the problem? I don't remember what we were talking about. Professor Olsen, I told them. He's here, and now he's my boss. And he told me not to call him professor because I'm not his student anymore. He told me to call him Jeremy. Oh, Vince said. Do you not like his name or something? I groaned. He tries so hard, Paul said. I love you, Mr. Auster. I love you too, Mr. Auster. Maybe I should show you how much. Vince, please, we have to. Then, through the phone, came what sounded like a large family eating bowls of chili all at the same time. Well, we lost them, Sandy said. Can't even begin to describe to you what I'm seeing. I now know what narrators of nature documentaries feel like during mating season. It's just a sight to behold. Looks like it's just you and me, kiddo. I need new friends, I muttered. Nah, no one will put up with your bullshit like we do. I was outraged. My bullshit? You listen to me, you mayonnaise-covered cracker. I will destroy boss, huh? I sighed and banged my head against the door. Yes, that must have been a surprise. You have no idea. Well, what's the problem? I pulled the phone away from my ear to stare at it before putting it back against my head. Didn't you hear what I said? Right, Sandy said innocently. But you've told us time and time again that there's nothing between the two of you. Vehemently so, even. And since you wouldn't lie to us about that, then what's the big issue? Especially after all the shit you gave me about Darren and Ty about Dom. I wouldn't imagine you'd put yourself in a position where the same could be done to you. That's huh. He had a point. There was absolutely nothing between Jeremy Olsen and me, and there never would be. And if I had a crush on him, if it could even be called that, it was nothing more than professional hero worship. Jeremy was brilliant. He was kind and funny and sweet, and sometimes when he laughed, he tilted his head back, flashing his teeth and baby doll. You're right, I said. It was surprising, I guess, walking in here and finding out that he's my boss. Of course, Sandy said easily. That would be a shock for anyone. I thought one of the super gays was the director. He was. He had to resign to go do super gay stuff. Well then, there you go. Because even if you were keeping things from me about how you felt about a certain nerdy and hot professor, nerdy and hot boss, then you would need to do your best to keep that under wraps until either one or both of you has moved on from your job. And then and only then would you be able to pursue a relationship with him. I yelped. He ignored me. But since that doesn't seem to be the case, you have nothing to worry about. Yeah, I said weakly. Nothing to worry about. He sounded amused. I hated him. Good, well, I'm glad we've had this talk. If you need anything, you call me. I'll always be here to listen. You know that, right? For anything, all of us will. I know, I said, and I did. They might aggravate me, and every now and then we might find ourselves in ridiculous positions that tended to defy known logic, but I couldn't ask for better friends. I didn't know what I'd done to deserve them. Thanks, Sandy. You're welcome, he said. And I promise to keep this between us. And by that you mean you're going to tell Darren, and Maddie and Larry and Nana and Charlie. You know me so well. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go find a hose so I can spray these two mutts in heat. Paul, you are going to hurt yourself. Put Vince down. Bad, Paul, bad. I thought I heard Paul snap back through a mouthful of something before the phone disconnected. It was then I realized I was still in a closet that smelled like feet with a shit ton of toilet paper. My life, I sighed, looking up at the ceiling. Jesus Christ. I'd wasted enough time in here. Any longer and Marina, or heaven forbid, Jeremy would come looking for me, and I didn't want them to think I was slacking on my first day. I took a calming breath as I put my phone back in my pocket. I opened the door and 2 teenagers were standing in the hall, staring at me. Unfortunately, I recoiled, forgetting that when one is surprised by teenagers, one can't show terror. They would sense it and use it to either attack or tear me down emotionally with slang that sounded like text speak. It took me a moment to recognize them and remember their names. Diego and Kai. They'd been the ones sitting out in the front when I'd arrived. Up close, they looked so fucking young. And even though it hadn't been that long since I'd been their age, it felt like a lifetime. Diego was short, almost more so than Tyson. He was rail thin and had the beginnings of a mustache growing on his upper lip. He wore cut-off jean shorts and a loose black tank top with a smiley face on it. He had a wallet chain that looped around to his back pocket, and I wondered if I'd ever been cool enough in my life to pull off a wallet chain. I thought not. Up close, and now that they were actually looking at me, though it appeared to be with mild disdain, I could see Kai was pretty. I didn't like to try and guess what people define themselves as, but if I had to, I thought Kai was non-binary. Their head was shaved to a minimal stubble, and they had their septum pierced with a small silver ring. They weren't wearing makeup, but it wouldn't have surprised me if they did sometimes. They wore similar cut-off jeans and a shirt that proclaimed down with the patriarchy. Where Diego had flip-flops, Kai wore black boots with silver studs along the laces, and both of them were staring at me. Hi, I said, closing the closet door behind me. How are you? You were shouting in the closet, Diego said, arching his pierced eyebrow. Why were you shouting in the closet? Oh, I was practicing. For, stuff that sure sounded convincing. They didn't look like they believed me. What kind of stuff? Kai asked. Their voice was soft and gravelly, deeper than I expected it to be. I thought quickly. Adult stuff you'll understand one day when you're older, Kai grimaced. That was lame. So lame, Diego echoed. I try, I said. There's just some things I needed to work out. And hey, I didn't really get a chance to introduce myself. What are you? Kai asked. I blinked. I'm sorry, queer, they asked, looking me up and down. I forced myself not to fidget under their gaze. My hair was pulled back in a tight bun, the ends crinkled and sticking out. I hadn't tried to straighten it, happy with the way it looked. My tie was a little crooked and my collar felt like it was choking me, but I thought I looked all right. Gender fluid, trans. I wasn't used to such bluntness. I had no problem with who I was, but it was still almost shocking to hear it from someone I didn't know. I wasn't offended, but I was curious. Does it matter? Kai shrugged nonchalantly, but there was a weird edge in their eyes that made me think it did. Just good to know, Diego bumped their shoulder. Had a straight guy here once. He was nice. That sounded ominous. Nice, huh? He tried, Kai said. Didn't quite get it. At least he tried, I said. That doesn't always happen. So, what are you? They weren't going to let this go. Is it important to you? The same shrug. It isn't, that shrug said, but it is. When I was 13, one of the other foster kids had gone in my room while I was out. He trashed a lot of my stuff simply because he could. I'd been furious because I'd had so little to begin with. Back then, I was dealing with my own shit and hadn't been able to understand the anger this other kid had been carrying. He was destructive because he didn't know how else to be. I can see that now. But I wouldn't have been able to do anything at the time. He'd been gone the next week. I never found out what happened to him. But when I came back into my room, I found the kid had thrown a heavy book against the mirror on the back of the door. The mirror was cracked down the middle, and my reflection was fractured. A little on the nose, but it had made more sense than anything I'd ever felt before. Fracture was a bit of a misnomer. It meant broken. I wasn't. But there were still two halves of me, and I stood in front of that mirror for a long time. There'd been no realization like a lightning strike, no moment when I looked at my reflection and thought, yes, this makes sense. It didn't, and it wouldn't for a long time. You need a label? I asked now, trying to get in the right headspace. Getting to know the kids at Phoenix House was important. It was why I was here. It was part of what I wanted to do. But I couldn't seem like I was patronizing them. Kai snorted. It's all about labels these days, don't you know that? No, I said honestly, I don't. Labels are good for a lot of people. But some don't need them or even want them. And that's you? Diego asked. He had the barest hint of an accent that curled around each of his words like a caress. I shrugged. Not necessarily. But I just want to make sure that's clear. I don't know that it's cool demanding to know who people are. Kai laughed, and it wasn't the nicest of sounds. Cool, huh? I stared hard at them. Yeah, cool, is that a problem? I thought they were going to push more, but they didn't. They relaxed, leaning into Diego, who put an arm around their shoulders. Ah, so that answered a question I didn't even know I had. That was cute. Baby queers had the tendency to make my heart melt a little. I'm envy, Kai said. Do you know what that is? It sounded like a challenge. I do, I said evenly. Non-binary like I thought. And good for you for figuring that out. That's awesome. Kai's eyes narrowed. You mean that? Why wouldn't I? A lot of people don't. I say non-binary and most people stare at me weird. I knew what that felt like. That might be because they've never heard the term before. Straight people, Diego said, rolling his eyes. They don't know shit. I frowned. While I get what you're saying, there are plenty of straights who at least make an attempt. It's Pride Month, Kai said, which was technically true, though Arizona had to be different and wouldn't celebrate until September. I don't have to care about their attempts. Right, I said slowly. But while we can be proud, we don't want to cut off potential allies. Oh Jesus, Kai moaned. You're one of those queers. Unity and blah, blah, blah. Maybe. But I'd rather be unified than divided. Come on, Kai, Diego said, nudging them down the hall. Let's go see what Marina brought for breakfast. I'm hungry. Kai looked like they were going to protest, but then allowed themselves to be pulled away. They glanced at me once over their shoulder before leaving. I watched as Diego dropped his arm from around their shoulder and took Kai's hand in his. Fucking cute asshole baby queers, I muttered to no one in particular. The rest of my first day was a whirlwind. I barely had time to breathe, much less think about everything that had happened. Marina found me after Kai and Diego left, telling me she had a bunch of people for me to meet. She looked concerned, asking if I was all right, but I smiled tightly at her and told her I was fine. She nodded, walking past me to knock on Jeremy's door. I hurried back down the hall. The front of Phoenix House had more people in it, at least a dozen, most of them kids. My official title at Phoenix House was Peer Navigator, and during the interview, there'd been pretty words about facilitating conversations about intersectionality and the importance of living authentically. Stephen, former director, super gay, and apparently friends with Jeremy, had seemed less interested in these particulars, merely asking me about the courses I'd taken and my plans for the future. When I'd gotten the call with the offer, I'd been relieved rather than happy. I'd tried not to put all my eggs in one basket, but the two other social service centers I'd applied with weren't as bright as Phoenix House. There was something depressing about the other offices, with their dingy, flickering lights and sterile rooms. It was offensively clinical, and while I understood that's how things were most likely going to be, social work wasn't glamorous. I'd practically shouted my acceptance when Marina called me. So I was a peer navigator. Phoenix House had Jeremy. My life was a comedic tragedy, as its director and Marina as its program manager. There were 3 case managers, a psychologist, one random dude who handled finances pro bono, and me. That was it. 7 people to handle the entire queer youth community in Tucson. The kids turned to stare at me. The 3 adults with them, I assumed the case managers, didn't step forward to introduce themselves. Diego leaned over and whispered something in Kai's ear. They snorted and shook their head. I glanced back over my shoulder to see if Marina would save me. Hell, I'd even take Jeremy at that moment. But since God apparently had a personal vendetta against me, I was all alone. I swallowed thickly as I turned back toward the many pairs of eyes that took me in, looking me up and down. The children were the hope for the future and blah, 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 but they could also be judgmental bitches. I know because I was one not too long ago. They continued to stare. I cleared my throat and forced a smile on my face. Hey, I'm Kori. I just started today. I hope to get to know all of you. I ask that you give me a bit of time to remember all your names, and if you ever need anything or have any questions, my door is always open. How old are you? A girl near the front asked. She was a skinny thing with brightly colored tattoos on her arms. I blinked. 23. You don't look it, she said, sounding dubious. You look like you're 14. I rolled my eyes at her. Honey, it's called the perfect skincare regimen taught to me by a drag queen, and genetics. Don't feel bad that not everyone can look this good all the time. Whoa, she breathed, hardcore. A couple of the adults looked as if they were covering up laughter as I winced. I had to remember that I wasn't at home. I had to be authoritative and look like I knew what I was talking about, even though I really didn't. Shit, sorry. That's not, drag queens. A larger boy asked me with wide eyes. He reminded me of Paul. I want to try drag one day, but I don't know if I'd be any good. Too many, I admitted. My roommate is Helena Handbasket, who works at the boy gasped dramatically. You know Helena Handbasket? I squinted at him. How the hell do you know Helena Handbasket? You better not be trying to sneak into the bar. You're underage, and Daddy Charlie will kick your ass if you do. Everyone knows Helena Handbasket, Diego said, as if I was stupid. She's famous, I groaned inwardly. I was never going to tell Sandy about this. He would be more insufferable than he already was. Do you do drag? Another boy asked. He was black and his head was shaved. He wore expertly applied eyeliner. Better than I could do at his age. I struggled to keep up with the conversation. No. In case you couldn't tell, I get awkward in front of large groups of people. What are you? Kai asked, this again. Does it matter? They shrugged. Maybe we want to know someone working here knows what we're going through. It's not too much to ask. One of the case managers, a woman, finally decided to interject. Hey, maybe we should just let Kori introduce himself without worrying about the little details. I liked her. She could stay. The other 2 would face my wrath in this life or the next. But Kai wasn't having any of it. They acted as if they didn't give a shit, but I could see the exact moment they decided to push. It's just a question, they said, sounding innocent and sweet and filled with lies and evil. I get crap every day for who I am. I don't want that to happen here. Oh, this one was going to be trouble. Do you really think I'd do that? Kai didn't look put out at all. I don't know. I don't know you, which is why I'm asking. We're supposed to be inclusive, but queer people can be just as prejudiced as the heteros. I'm non-binary. I've been told for years I need to pick a gender. I'm bisexual, Diego said, and I've had gay people tell me that I'm not really queer because I find women attractive. A girl a long time ago told me she would never date me because she knew I also liked guys. Jesus Christ. So I had to stop myself from pointing out that they were kids, and no one should be messing around with anyone, and that a long time ago to them was probably last month. But I kept that to myself. That sucks, I said, eloquent as always. I'm sorry you had to go through that. If any of you have to go through that, it's unfair. So you can see why we'd ask, Kai said, trapping me neatly. I didn't owe them shit, but I could see where they were coming from. I'm bigender. It was met with silence. A trickle of sweat dropped down the back of my neck. Then, bigender, Kai repeated. Diego shook his head. I don't know what that is. Trans. Is that trans? It's like gender fluid, the bigger boy said. Right, you go back and forth. Yay, this was going so well. Sort of. Gender fluid is variable and can run a spectrum of gender identity. Bigenderism tends to only focus on two, though it doesn't have to be just male or female. They didn't seem impressed. So you can be a boy or a girl. The first girl asked. I didn't think now was the time to get into the psychology behind it. I guess it's a little more complicated than that. I feel both simultaneously, but sometimes one is more dominant than the other, which is why I tend to use specific pronouns when do you have a boyfriend? Diego asked. Or a girlfriend? They all seemed very interested in that. Oh God, I was going to murder Marina for taking so long. And possibly Jeremy, but that would most likely mean having to touch him in order to rip his face off, and that brought a whole new set of problems. No, I don't. I'm single. Why? Kai asked. I smiled at them. Because between going to school for the last 5 years in order to get to be with your bright and shining faces and getting stuck in plots out of 80s movies, I haven't had time. They had questions. So many questions. I could see it on their faces. But before they could open their mouths and continue, I was saved. This seems like it's going so well, a voice said. I turned to see Marina and Jeremy standing behind me. Marina was smiling widely. Jeremy looked amused. Oh yeah, I was going to have to get over whatever problem I had, because I would go after him first for letting me flounder. Does it? I asked. I think maybe you're seeing things differently, she laughed. Nah. It's best to get in front of the firing squad early so you can get it out of the way. Take the shots, and then we're golden. They can be insistent, but they've got a point. It's best to know where everyone is coming from. And speaking of everyone, this is Jeremy Olsen. He's our interim director until we hire a replacement. He loves answering questions, so feel free to ask anything you want. Jeremy no longer looked amused. This pleased me greatly. Yes, Jeremy. Why don't you come right over here and tell us all about yourself? Perhaps a speech from our fearless leader. He scowled at me as he came to stand beside me. Trouble, he whispered, bumping my shoulder. You're trouble. How did I not know that about you? I shrugged. We're not in a classroom anymore. I'm sure you're going to find out a lot more about me. I blanched. Wow, that did not come out like I meant it to. Do me a favor and pretend I didn't say that. He snorted. I'll keep that in mind. Whatever the hell that meant. Jeremy looked out at everyone in the room. I started to take a step back to let him have the floor, but he reached out and grabbed my wrist, squeezing it once before letting go. I stayed right where I was, my brain screaming about desks and intensity, and for some reason cursing in Spanish. It's great to meet all of you, Jeremy said, and he was using his professor voice. The one I remembered very clearly from the days where he paced back and forth in front of a large class, the women, and a good number of the men, sighing dreamily. And thanks to Marina for the warm welcome. I can't wait to get to know all of you. While I may be temporary, I promise that I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can. I'm told that you didn't see a lot of the previous director, but that's not how I work. I'm more hands-on, shoot me now. And plan on spending time out here with all of you rather than holed up back in the office. There's a lot of work to be done, and I know that we're all working toward the same goal of educating ourselves and others. If you ever have any questions, my door is always open. If I'm not here, Marina has my phone number and email, so you can reach me that way. Any time of day. If you need help, even just a ride to get you to a safe place, you can call me, or Marina, or Kori here. Well, sure, except I didn't have a car. I supposed I could show up on my bike. We're here to help you, Jeremy said, and to make sure that this is a great summer for all of us. Kai opened their mouth, but Jeremy beat them to the punch. And I'm 36, bisexual, and single. He grinned at them, waggling his eyebrows. But that last part isn't anything you should concern yourself with, since this isn't a dating profile. Half the people in the room looked as if they already had a crush on him. He tended to have that effect on people. So, he said, clapping his hands, tell me what's on your minds. Chapter 5. How to Be Creepy with Fruit, a Tragedy by Kori. Ellis. Need a ride? I looked up from the text thread on my phone. Ty, ever the drama queen. I know, but they could have at least told me they were trying to get pregnant. To see a bright yellow Jeep stop next to the curb in front of the bus stop. The top was off, and Jeremy sat in the driver's seat, wearing mirror shades and looking like an all-around douchebag. Sorry, I said evenly, my heart stumbling in my chest. I don't accept rides in vehicles that look like they're owned by a sorority girl who got it from her daddy, because he doesn't understand love and affection and buys expensive things instead. He looked moderately offended. I bought it used, and the color is called Sunshine, thank you very much. I waved dismissively. That doesn't help like you think it does. No, I don't want to go to your rager, Vanessa. Stop asking. He looked over his sunglasses at me, brow furrowed. But all the boys are going to be there. I laughed. It's not a big deal. The bus is going to be here, get in, the woman who sat next to me at the bus stop said. She hadn't uttered a word while we'd been waiting. I wished she'd kept that up. He looks loaded and like he'd treat you right. Back in my day, when a man stopped and offered something, we took it. She paused, considering. After coming to an agreement on prices and making sure our pimp was okay with it. I turned to stare at her slowly. I'm not a sex worker. She squinted at me. I stood abruptly, shouldering my backpack as I walked toward the Jeep. Jeremy was laughing as I pointed a finger at him. The only reason I'm getting in this vehicle is because I think I was about to be conscripted into a job I didn't want. Sure, he said, of course. You hear that? I asked mildly as Jeremy started to look panicked. You can't murder me. He gunned the engine and pulled away from the curb. In agreeing to accept a ride from Jeremy in his ridiculous car to get away from a strange situation, I wasn't necessarily thinking about the fact that I'd be trapped in a car with him. And even if I had, I didn't live that far away from Phoenix House. The trip should have taken 10 or 15 minutes at the most. Except it was just after 5, which meant rush hour. And to make things worse, Tucson seemed to be perpetually stuck in a state of everything is under construction at all times everywhere. Meaning that only a few short moments after we left the bus stop, we came to backed-up traffic that barely moved. In June, in Arizona, In a yellow Jeep without the top on, with a hot guy in mirror shades who was also my boss. He blasted the air conditioning, which was completely futile seeing as how the Jeep didn't have a top. "I meant to put the top on over the weekend," he said apologetically. "But I got so busy preparing for today that it slipped my mind. I tend to get a bit scatterbrained. Dad was supposed to remind me, but I can't remember if he did or not." "It's fine," I said, sure I was already melting into the seat. "I mean, yeah, you're pretty much destroying our environment single-handedly, but that's a problem for the next generation." He shot me a glare. Trouble. I should have known that the whole "yes, Professor Olsen" thing was an act. I immediately started singing another church hymn in my head before my brain could make his words dirty. I was worried about my grade. "Now I don't have to be," he shrugged. "I'm your boss. And we're not at work now, are we?" "No, we're not. Thank you for noticing." I coughed roughly. He glanced over at me. "All right, fine," I managed to say. "Just the exhaust and the color of your Jeep. Nothing to worry about. It's sunshine." Just because it has a pretty name doesn't mean it's not offensive or inappropriate for a man of your age and social standing. He sighed dramatically. And here I was, extending my hand in kindness to someone in need, and all I'm getting for it is shit in return. "You deserve it," I told him honestly. "What happened to the little car you had back at the wedding?" He looked surprised. "You remember that thing?" Yeah. Why wouldn't I? I mean, that looked like the car I expect all untenured college professors to have. It even had an old peace symbol sticker that I assume had a story behind it that involves you wearing large amounts of hemp." He snorted. "Not quite. I decided to get rid of it and upgrade. And this is what you chose. Get out." I reached for the door. "It's probably for the best. I have a reputation to maintain." "You know what?"